Meeting to order. Roll call vote.
Leo Penn,
Present.
Patty Garbarino, Cindy Johansson,
Here.
Nancy McCarthy, Marilyn Nemser,
Here.
Curtis Robinson,
Present.
Joe Sartori.
Right. And so Nancy, what's the deal with Nancy? She's not here either. What's hers? Is she arriving or is she coming? Do we have any information?
We thought she was going to be here, but Joe might not want to be.
Member McCarthy indicated she was called to court today and she anticipates she will be here around 10:30. And asked her to provide me with updates as her arrival time became more. So I will call the board.
Thank you. Okay, and now it's item number 1.03, approval and adoption of today's agenda. We have a motion.
So moved. I second.
Second, any discussion on today's retreat agenda? Seeing none, all those in, Marilyn, you have a question?
Yes, I'm gonna need for people to actually use the mics. So sorry, my
Okay.
hearing isn't great.
And Marilyn?
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Seeing none, agenda stands. Do we have anyone here for public comment on items not on the agenda? Anyone? Seeing none, let's move on to item number 3, discussion. Action items, let's talk about the board self-evaluation. Who's up for that? Like we have our guest, our facilitator.
Good morning.
Okay.
Hey Curtis, I'm usually not someone who's a foreign person, but I'm gonna straighten your name.
Unless it's all off.
I didn't get a chance to say good morning, so good to see you, so. Thank you, everybody. I'm gonna start this morning first with a little quick introduction and get us kicked off this morning. But first and foremost, I really want you to be comfortable today, as we work through this. If you need to get more coffee, please get more coffee. I know we have a scheduled break, but that's just to remind you that people need a break. But of course, conveniently, we have restroom in the corner. If you need more coffee, if you just need to stand, because today's a long day, and stretch, feel free to do so. It's about being comfortable because I think we really do our best work when we're comfortable. And to that end, Marilyn, if you need me to put a wireless mic on, let me know.
I hear you.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So, good morning. My name is Debbie Moss. I am currently serving as the contract CEO for the Association of California County Boards of Education. My background is in association management, and I have worked in a number of different industries, including agriculture, transportation, air quality, construction trades, and now education. And I specialize in board development and board thinking. And so the certification that I hold, Certified Association Executive, is a designation from the American Society of Association Executives. And it's a competency in 10 domain areas related to association management. So it's everything from chapter relations to finance to board governance models, including even international relations. And I'm actually in the process, I have to recertify every 3 years with 40 hours of accreditation training. It's interesting because a lot of people don't go to school and say I'm going to be an association management exec when I grow up. It actually ends up being something you fall into backwards. And I did fall into it backwards from growing up in Petaluma. I'm fourth generation on an original General Vallejo land grant ranch on the eastern side of Petaluma, and did 4-H. My dad was the FFA advisor at Petaluma High School, so he kept me in 4-H, so he didn't have to deal with other parents thinking I got favored treatment. And so my first association management job was with the California Wool Growers Association, which I had actually belonged to since I was 6 years old. So my parents really instilled in me the importance of contributing to community and contributing to the industry in which you're benefiting from, or is servicing your community. So that, by long way of introduction, is my background. And my colleague today, Ken Barrett, president of the Alameda County Board of Education. So Ken, I'll let you take a few minutes to share about yourself.
The things you learn when you hang out together. My daughter was an urban 4-H'er, which means we raised goats in our backyard in Oakland.
Nice.
She won.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be here with you all. This is my first time helping as a facilitator, although I've known Dave, who normally sits in this chair for years, and watched his work. I'm going to give you my non-school board background. I started in 1985 on an organization called Seneca Family of Agencies. And Seneca is a nonprofit that crosses education, behavioral health, child welfare, and juvenile justice. And in that role, I've gotten to serve on a lot of different deliberative bodies. I've been in California Child Welfare Council, on the Mental Health Services Act Oversight and Accountability Commission, as well as having served on my board for 18 years, been president a few times. And today it will be my last meeting as president, and my sympathy to you, sir. I've done a lot of work with facilitating groups, including my own organization. And I bring a perspective that if you think you know who's in a group, and if you think you know what they're thinking, you're starting out wrong. So just trying to be open, learn, and help. I also wanted to add the caveat. Our county board, like every county board, has our way of doing things. From time to time, I'll tell you, this is how we do things. That by no means that I think we're right. It just means we're trying to give you other examples of how other county boards might operate in areas where it might be different. And because by the nature of county boards, we're going to have a 70-80% overlap. We're going to do things almost exactly the same because what we do is pre-specified in the code. But on occasion, there will be some differences, and I might chime in now and then to say, oh, we did that a little bit different. Don't take it as a value judgment, just take it as a perspective. So that's me, and that's my background.
Thank you. So I'd like to start out this morning first with just a quick run robin from, and I with no reference to staff at all, with the board. And I want you to tell me something good. So Marilyn, tell me something good.
Something good. The drive out here was amazing. I drove with John, and he took a different road than I've ever taken, and it was just beautiful. And I got me in a great mood when I got.
Great, beautiful, great headspace to be in. Lee?
I didn't get lost this time. Last time I made a right instead of a left. So, but then all of a sudden, Jill, the last five miles, I was like, am I in the right place? Because this seems to be such a long drive. I'm not familiar, but it was the right place.
Good. Tom?
I'm just in a generally good mood. Right, and the weather's pretty good, and World Cup hasn't gone the way I wanted, but still interesting.
Curtis?
I'll continue the driving situation, and this is a little different. My daughter, who's 20, just got her driver's license. She's in Los Angeles, and I was down there this weekend, and we drove around Los Angeles. We took the car back, so she's not ready for the car. Good driving experience this weekend. She's the Uber, an hour, it's an hour and a half bus ride for her summer internship. And she's got to go on RTD, which we always call the rough, tough, and dangerous bus ride. So we're hopeful that we can leave her this jalopy car and she can be safe.
Jill?
I planted a fig tree 5 years ago in my garden, and I got a lot of kind of like eye rolls from my family. You're never gonna have figs. I harvested the first fig and I'm eating them this morning in my breakfast. They are absolutely delicious. And I banned the critical members of my family are not allowed to have any figs. Only the supportive members.
We need to talk, because I have a similar story, but it's the birds that I am not real happy with.
My happy moment is related to food and summer. I just had the best bowl of cereal at home with all these berries, incredible blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, and it just made me so happy.
I feel at home here. This is the food club. All right, what I'd like to start with this morning first is some discussion norms. And we will dive a little bit more into the survey themes and the interview themes. But among us this morning, as we get started, I would like to hear from you. What will it take for you to feel heard and respected today in this meeting? This is the part where you talk.
I always feel very
So
respected,
do
so
I.
I'm not worried,
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that.
Said ditto. I think we have a good way of letting people talk and I think people are open with what they want to say and share.
And I think Curtis is very good at kind of like, no, let this other person, because sometimes I forget the rules and then Curtis is like, no, let that person finish first and then okay, now you're very good at that.
Lee? Or you have it, I wanna make sure, just because we've heard from Jill and Curtis, do you feel heard and comfortable today sharing, or is there a particular item we wanna make sure we agree to as a group?
I'm comfortable. Sure.
Marilyn?
I feel heard and respected in this group and thank you for the question. I also would like to make sure I hear everybody else. So if you have a soft voice, try to speak up for me, please.
Okay.
Not a bad day here.
And please hold us accountable if there's something that you can't hear.
Thank you.
Cindy?
I feel heard and respected.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on to the next assignment. So first I want to introduce a few friends of mine. So Ken and I are gonna use these, and I know you don't know Ken and I very well. But it's as momentum builds this afternoon, as I'm confident it will be, feel free to join in the exercise. So these are tools that I use to help facilitate discussion when someone wants to make a point but maybe doesn't have the words for it, or if it's maybe a visual cue will help if there's tension in the room, break it. So the first one I'll introduce is cheese. So this is, would you like some cheese with that wine? So
Yeah.
this exercise is for, wanna get up the point across that might be a little whiny without necessarily calling someone out. This is for a really great idea, when somebody says something that's, wow, I hadn't thought of something that way before, or that's really something we should give some more thought to, or, I don't wanna say brilliance, because I don't wanna unnecessarily escalate the use of the light bulb, but that's a light bulb. And a heart, if something really strikes you as, a connection, a heart, that it was thoughtful, it was kind, it was considerate, or even if you feel you need some additional heart, we have the heart. And I don't wanna say Grumpy Squid's my favorite, and I don't know why he came bigger than the rest of my friends. But this is, you're being grumpy, or, this, hello, I think we need an attitude change, so. And start with grumpy, not that I think you need an attitude change personally. So those are my friends. So, other thing I wanna do this morning is make sure we are all on the same page for what we're looking to accomplish today. So, and I realize I may be jumping a little bit too early to the end at this point, when we haven't had a chance to dive into the results of the surveys and the one-on-one conversations. But in particular, the one-on-one conversations, because I didn't get to talk with all of you, I'd like to hear what are, and if it's more than 3 or 4, that's fine, because we're gonna have a process here to vote as well. What would you like to accomplish coming out of today?
Well, as the president of the board who's running the meetings, I feel like kind of the big elephant in the room is not here in the room. And I think that's why most of us are here, because one of our board members has a difficult time being a board member that is, I don't know, it's a challenge. We have a challenge with a board member, and that this is Nancy. And again, she's not here. This is the second retreat we've had where she's been either late or not present. So it makes my job a little bit difficult, because sometimes the Roberts Rules of Orders, the way we do things, it gets discombobulated because of our very outspoken trustee who tends not to follow a lot of the procedure.
So let's
to
focus
me,
on, I'm sorry.
that's the question I think I'm looking to answer is how, as the president, do I support kind of just a more positive situation in the board meeting?
Okay, so that's what I would like us to pass that the discussion as is what is the process that we. Or maybe it's not even a process, but what is the system, or what is the outcome? So one of the things that I heard from you was Robert Rules of Order. So hearing back to you, what I think I heard was, is there shared agreement about how meetings are run and what the rules of running a meeting? That I or clarify.
So I think there's some general understanding, but again, you know, lawyers are running this world right now and they know kind of how to talk around people or through people or just it becomes difficult. And Nancy's a lawyer, so she has that ability to continue to barrage perhaps the person at the podium with multiple questions when other people want to have a turn, you know, and to intervene, it just becomes tricky.
So I'm hearing meeting decorum. The shared agreement around meeting decorum.
Airtime norms.
Pardon?
Airtime norms, how do you share and balance the amount of time each person speaks?
Thank you.
Yes, Jill.
I would like the board to have a better partnership with the superintendent and work together more effectively. Because I joined the board because I want to help make the lives of students in their county better in terms of well-being and education, and I don't feel like I'm doing that on this board.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Do you feel clear that your understanding and the superintendent's understanding of your roles are clearly defined and you understand them in the superintendent? Yes.
I don't know. No, I don't know that they're clearly defined. I know what the education code says our roles are, but I don't know that that limits what we can do together. I don't feel like it does.
Oh, okay. All right, so it's what we do in our lanes. And then is there a way that we can combine beyond our lanes that we both can agree on? And have a mutual partnership.
You said that so much better than I did.
And just clarify, you said it very well.
Yeah, that's right.
Marilyn, is this a time when I'm getting that you just right now are getting things back from us to say what our expectations are? Is it not a time to make comments on what's being said already?
You can make comments on what's being said.
I'm making notes. Yeah. Do you prefer it that way?
It's meant to be an open dialogue,
Okay,
so.
well, I have two things. One is I disagree a little bit about the concept of airtime. I don't think it's airtime. I think it's just basically respectfully finding a way that we listen to each other without interrupting and that we wait to be recognized before we speak and not do, monologues that go on forever, putting and after every sentence so that it's all in one sentence, so nobody else gets to talk. But it's not a question, if someone has something important to say, and interesting and relevant, then if they need 10 minutes, that's fine.
I appreciate that.
The other thing is,
Can I ask you a question? Is it me or is it one person? When you're talking about that.
most of the ones.
Yeah.
I think that's why we're here today, and so it's sad. The other thing is about what Jill said, I wanna make sure that our expectations are all realistic about what we can and cannot do. As county board members, Jill came from a district board. And most of us did not come from district board, so Jill is used to, being able to impact students' lives in different ways, maybe than we can. And so I would love to see maybe our roles clarified a little more.
Yep, role clarity, yep. To quote David, who I also facilitate these with, no one in their right mind would have created a system like this, right? I mean, if you know, if it were to be done over, it would be a lot, I don't wanna say a lot more thoughtful, but it would have a lot more reason to it. So the system that we are working in is evolved and morphed over time. And here we are today, and there's a lot of it, it's either gray or it doesn't necessarily like. So just to clarify that, you know, it's a shared understanding that the setup and where county boards of education and their relationship with the superintendent have evolved is not necessarily something that I'm gonna say a sane person would do. So.
Cindy had a comment.
Yeah, so +1 to meeting decorum, because I feel like our evaluation and the notes, just that's like the pain point right now in all of our experience. But I will say, Curtis, I've really appreciated the attempts you've had to manage the meetings. The superintendent partnership improvement with respect to Marilyn's comment about Jill's experience. My 1.5 years here of meeting with other county boards, I have seen what I believe is a stronger collaboration. The expression shared governance that is used by a lot of county boards has really tried to, as Ken was describing, come up with just a much clearer sense of what are our goals and our priorities shared in our own lanes. And when I've talked to board members, many in the Bay Area of other county boards, there's a clear sense of the impact on the students, which is why I think we're all here. And I also felt a year and a half. I felt like, and I like all of you, you're wonderful. I love the Marin County Office of Education, but it feels very bureaucratic. And I think we have opportunities to do more. So I just, but the pain point has to be addressed first, because I feel like this lack of decorum creates a level of dysfunction. So, but without Nancy here, I'm not sure, like, again, like this is the challenge. If that hadn't been an issue, I would say we should really focus on this second area. Just not sure.
And I would just add, I mean, you know that, you know, John's a new superintendent, right? But we've been working with Mary Jane Park. I've been on the board since 2005. My father was on the board since 1965. So. He passed in 2005 for some god awful reason. Byron Mousy called me up on the phone and said, you don't consider this job. And actually, you know, when I got up in front of the board to pitch my reason for being a board member, I actually said, you know, I understand boards and how they can hire and fire the superintendent, right? I mean, I think that was one of the words that came out of my mouth. I mean, I had no idea that John was an elected official himself. So that does create a different dynamic as far as the board, but where I think that the concern is, and I would have the same concern only because I've been with a different superintendent for so long. And now we have John, is that there's a different leadership style here. And I think what happens there is that because the different leadership style came into view, we didn't actually go back and start at the top in a deep enough conversation as far as what is our strategic plan, right? Because if we don't know our strategic plan and our vision and our mission, right? This is associations and board work here, then we don't all have a unified direction. Okay, and if we don't have those things, we don't feel like we're making that impact. And so I would suggest that maybe that's one error that's been overlooked significantly. Is that we might need to go back up to the top so we can all come together, and that might be a little part of this treat
All
here.
right, we will add that, so. I'm gonna put programmatic, but I use that in a broad sense. Strategic plan.
Can I just jump in with a couple of quick thoughts? So first, I understand that you're dealing with a problem. And that it's a problem that you all want to deal with. I also think that not having this beginning part need to focus on that gives you an opportunity to talk about how you would take your board to the next step, absent that problem or peripheralizing that problem. So, and I really want to just make a comment. And again, this is one of these. This is how we do it. This doesn't need to be how you do it. But in the areas where where it's not in our primary area of responsibility, that doesn't mean we don't work with our superintendent. But it's very clear that in those areas, we're working with her. This is delicate, so to be behind her, not with her. In other words, I have deep knowledge of mental health and special ed. She brings me in to say stuff she can't say. And I love it. It really gives me an opportunity to do work that goes beyond. So the place where I see boards get in trouble is when they try to guide policy, and like she would never tell me how to vote on interdistrict transfer, on a charter renewal. She might let me know how she feels, but she knows she has no influence in these processes, and she stays in her lane. Sorry if you don't, but no,
He does.
and that respect on our lane allows us to give her that same respect. So she'll bring us in behind as opposed to with. And that's just something that you might think about. What are the areas where I could be behind and supporting, but create big education change across the whole county?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I agree. I feel like if I were doing a self-evaluation, I think my growth area is poor relations. And I think we all have like narratives that we all tell ourselves how we got where we are. The one that I employ, whether it's true or not, works for me, is since being elected, there are two really important things happened. There was a 28-year incumbent in office who was a friend and mentor of mine, so we're definitely not on this side. But we have, I think, any staff member who's around for both would agree that we have very different management styles. So that's a big piece of it. So that's a change. And when she retired, over the next few years, there are a lot of people who happen to be retirement age, many of whom stayed around for an extra few years for a healthy, but I think it was a healthy transition. But there has been a cultural change in the office for sure. I think you can look at that when you look at our hiring practices, the amount of time and effort that's going into, and the board has, I think, got reports on all of this, a FIGMAT study that did a deep dive into our business service practices, our hiring practices in particular, job descriptions, and then some pretty big changes in collective bargaining where, I mean, just to put it right out there, the biggest raise in 28 years and improvements to healthcare. So there's this, definitely things feel different for better or for worse, regardless of what side you're on. The second area is that it's not the same board that was here when I was elected, that the board has gone through some significant changes. I think, were you elected the same year?
Yeah, same
So
thing.
we came in together, Maryland was here for pretty new. So I feel like there wasn't this moment, there's like two worlds sort of spinning independently. And I feel like this is hopefully we'll have some stability where we can start working together on exactly what you're talking about, like understanding each other's lanes. And I will say from my perspective, some of the disagreements I've had with Member McCarthy, I didn't know there were disagreements until she told me they were. But I feel like, okay, it's kind of what chilled me on like, okay, I need to try to accomplish the political things I want to accomplish. By political, I mean educational most of the time. But there are other things too, the mental health, all that sort of thing that I kind of push back from. So I think it kind of put me in a silo a little bit by my own choosing, not forced me into it, but like all that happening, It felt like there was this, just a lot of change underfoot, and I feel like it's kind of calmed down at this point. And hopefully with some board stability toward what Joe was talking about. I think she's.
So I'm hearing articulated around this room is there is a strong desire to work together. And that some of the reaction that has happened has been. I don't want to say it hasn't been intentional, but the reaction that has happened has maybe not been productive, but maybe self-preservation, if you will, or staying in the lane or focusing on things where we might otherwise spend time in that greater area, looking for that greater collaboration. So I don't want to rush off this, but I do want to start bringing into the conversation the things that came through with the survey and the one-on-one discussions. So other items you would like to leave with today? And even if we don't get it accomplished today, it gets us to the next step, right? So getting these, definitely we'll have some wins today. Definitely we'll get some things that the board can continue to work on. I would love this to be the first of many times I get to work with you. I also understand it may be the only time I get to work with you, but whoever does continue to work with you, or whether that work is internal, that you're set up on a path of, these are things that we agreed on that are important to us and what we feel is the vision for our work here on the board. So Marilyn, I think you were starting to say.
It's not answering this question. I just need to say that I am really sad. And I think it is very sad that 3 board members didn't connect with you to be interviewed. I found that hour with you very helpful, and it made me feel very heard. And I thought it was so important. And I'm just sad that all the board members didn't participate. That's all. I just needed to say that.
Other comments or things we want to put on board before we move to the finance?
So we're gonna come back to these things.
We're gonna be talking about this all day.
Okay.
And I'm not on the board, so I want to make sure it's okay to say this, but my dream for the board would be to conclude today with an idea about how to manage board meetings into the future, like very specifically, like this is how we're going to do business going forward. But I think it may have been already said, but I'm not sure. Decorum. It said that, but not just decorum, like accepting what the reality is and having norms or understandings. I'm not exactly sure what the right word is in place for like when things go south, as they do sometimes in our meeting, to have like a standard response for when that happens. And I think we've done that a few times. Like they've been like, okay,
You can create really clear standards for decorum. It's like trust but verify, right? You still have to have a very clear, well understood, agreed upon what happens when it goes sideways. We've learned this the hard way in some of our charter renewal system. If we have no protocol for what happens when someone goes over there a lot of time, then we had to suffer the consequences of what happened when people went over there a lot of time. And the first time it was allowed for one person, we had Governor Jerry Brown call it. And I let him go over 1 minute on the phone. And after that, I given permission to everybody in the audience. Oh, you're gonna let the governor go over, but you're not gonna let me go. Yeah, he's the governor. So having just a clear, when things are sideways, the clearer the rule and the more you follow that rule absolutely without exception, the better your prayer is to have some control. This is probably not something you haven't thought about already.
No, I think that's a really important point, because I do think there are times in our meeting where someone is saying something that everybody wants to hear and everyone's enjoying it. It's very positive, and that does go past the allotted time. And then when somebody starts saying things that people don't want to hear about, then the time is of course more strictly. So I think you make a very good point.
Even on the exceptions, you can have rules for the exceptions.
Sure.
We're going to allow a little more slack for parents then we're gonna allow for people who should know what the rules are every time. If that's a norm for the board, then everyone knows it does make it more difficult. But when there's not a really clear norm, that's when things go silent.
For me, it's a bit sad that, we have this board member whose personality and the way she addresses the board and other people within the board meeting has that kind of an attitude. Because I think there were items that, for me, when Nancy said it, it's like, that's actually a good point. But the way she presents it or the way she puts it out for discussion, it just get turned off. So I just wanted to share that.
And I wanna be cognizant of, as a group, that I really want us to be focusing on the outcome more than the process or the system.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want this to turn into the lens focusing on a particular board member. I understand this is the source of some of the angst that is going on here. But to your point, Lee, if there is a really good point that is brought up, how do we recognize that? How do we hear more about it? What's the norm about vetting something like that? So, taking the point away from the delivery or attaching it to a person. So I realize that's hard to do, but I want us to really be focusing on, I had shared with Ken earlier, so I should probably share with you. I want to figure out how to make a board of 6 a really strong board, because as a board of 6, you can do anything, right? And
7.
6. That's
Oh,
I'm
okay.
being deliberate here. I want to work with you, equip you to function and be a very strong board. And in the conversations I've had with you, oh, you're gonna give me.
I'm gonna give you all.
Because in the conversations I've had with you, you all bring tremendous background, you bring tremendous experience, you're, whether you're long tenured or you're, new to the area, everyone here brings tremendous value, and all of you aligned and headed in the same direction. Curtis, to your point, I think it was John's point about, what is that bigger picture strategic goal we're working on, with 6 of you working on it together. The disruptions of the day, I think, really, I don't want to say they fall away, but they become minimized.
And if I may, a board of 6 on 90% of the issues. But how do you all, with each other, with the 6 of you, assuming that there's someone whose opinion generally is somewhat different. Which I'm, I've got to pretend that I haven't heard any of that. But also when it's 4, how do you all acknowledge and respect the decision of 4, which is, I think, the much harder thing. When it's 6, it's like, I mean, I've been the outlier before. It's like, hey, get a life, you lost, right? But when it's a split vote, it's much more difficult to at least express interpersonal attachment. I disagree with your opinion, but I'm good with that. And when that gets modeled too, it makes the outlier much more difficult. So certainly if I were a one, when I've been the one vote, I'm trying to bring in a second vote. If it's clear to me that I'm not going to be able to do that, it definitely slows my roll. Do you know? Do you understand what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, thanks for sharing.
I would just add that I think we have very clear bylaw, decorum, standards, codes of conduct that we've adopted. So I feel like we're already there on what we want. I think to Ken's point, it's then, and you try in the meetings, and again, I think, but if she just jumps in without having the chair recognize her, or anybody for that matter, what is our process?
That's a specific.
Right. And personally, I wish the quorum also included the way, the tone, to Lee's point, and especially at staff, which is really problematic. Again, I feel like we represent Marin, there's like this level of expectation, but I'm not sure there's anything I can do about that, right? That's different personalities asking, making statements.
Let's talk more about that. Let's talk more about it.
Yeah.
I got recruited to my board because the superintendent had to have security. Because there was a board member that was threatening her. And I decided to run, that wasn't enough, because she's elected, she made that decision. But I decided to run when that same board member dressed down a staff member in public in a way that was utterly unacceptable. And I was like, you can mess with the superintendent.
You ran against this board member? You ran against this board member?
I ran, the board member decided not to run when they had some opposition. So I do think there are ways that you can address that. And I think we should talk about that, make sure that we have time to talk about it.
Thank you, Cindy, that was good.
But my note there is just when directions are, when actions and comments are being directed, so staff will take the board and help setting up how those are booked. Other thoughts on this, where I'm gonna go here next is I'm gonna have Ken start to dive us in really what is that lane for board member. And talk about what it is, as much as what it isn't, and where there's the gray areas. So I know I provided to you in the pre-reads, Venn diagram from the California County Superintendents. I have actually had some learning in the last week or two to realize there's actually stuff missing on there. And I think there's a few things that actually create confusion. And a little bit of the sausage making here, but I think this is relevant. CCS has subsequently put out a I won't have the right word, but basically it's a policy on that relationship. It's a very thick document, and what we are going to do at ACCBE is work on, I don't want to say updating that because that's not ours to update, but creating a similar graphic that shows those roles based on the CCS document that the California County Superintendent's developed. A similar document that at a glance creates clarity around where there's shared area in the Venn diagram, and then what's the superintendent's lane, so to speak, the circle, and what's the boards, and we're gonna base it on that. We're not gonna do this in a vacuum, so again, a little more sausage making for you. ACCB, we have now been meeting with the leadership team at the California County Superintendents on a bi-monthly basis, almost a year. And it's been super productive. So we would put the time and energy and effort and graphics into this, but of course, this would be something we would run by them to make sure we don't have a glaring error or that it's something they would be comfortable with us putting out. So
I should point out, I just volunteered to be on that committee with California soon, so I'm volunteering in that.
oh, are you guys updating the Venn diagram? Or are you talking about the board?
I just joined the committee from California County Soups to
work with the
to work with
ACCBE,
ACCBE.
and I just wanna say, I was so happy to hear that.
I thought you might be.
I was one of 4 of all the county boards in California. You're one of 4 superintendents, I believe that's what I was told, working with ACCBE. And it's a leadership.
I think it's just a great connection. A lot of it was when we were asked to volunteer with all 58 of us sitting here, no raise their hands. I thought it'd be like, because you've put in so much effort to find value in ACCBE.
Yeah.
So sorry for the word more.
No, I think this is good because I think at another level, this indicates how county boards and superintendents can work together. Our associations are finding ways to work together, and we're finding areas of collaboration and shared governance, if you will, probably use the term correctly. But the thing on the ACCBE side that was just so encouraging to us is like immediately there were the volunteers from CCS. It wasn't, okay, now I've heard that it was a room of 58, nobody raised their hand, but still.
Maybe not all 58.
From our perspective, you know, it can be very quick. So again, sort of creating that environment or that microcosm, if you will, where, you know, there is room for collaboration. And at an association level, we're working hard to do that. So, anyways, with all of that set up, Ken, I would like you to spend a little bit of time with the group and I'm gonna sit for a minute and let you take center.
Are you gonna put the diagram up or? Yeah, or not?
Comment first. Ken, I
Yeah,
apologize.
please.
And it may be out of topic, it is out of topic. So when I came into the board, I really did not have any background about the educational system, specifically the public educational system, the school districts and the board. And so what I did was try to learn everything. Every time we have a meeting, I review the topics. And I've also attended the Valley Unified School District meetings a lot of times. And I see a big difference, and it's educational for me because I see a big difference between what is discussed in the Unified School District versus the board. And I think the sort of wish that I have, although I also recognize I really do not have that much time to be able to do this, is to be more engaged in some of the county board responsibilities. I see that we have a board meeting, a staff member, and with all the respects, they're really, really very good. And I always say to people, we have very good professional members when they come up with their proposition or their reports. But I feel like that's all we do. We review it and we ask questions and then we say approve or not, it passes. I don't know where a stronger engagement can happen. I really admire what Cindy does because she's very much connected with the one of the board thing. That's something I cannot do given the kind of work that I am. And Cindy is more in the educational field, so really hooray to that. I'm always encouraged by what you bring up during those meetings. But I really sometimes feel like I wish there was something more engaging rather than just listening to the reports, reading it over the weekend because we get the materials on a Friday and then be able to come up with questions and maybe a general idea of this is a good thing to vote on or not. But
So I'm gonna make sure I'm hearing you right. In county board meetings, you're looking to be more engaged or have opportunities in advance of being more engaged to understand the material that's coming because you're feeling it's more like, I hear a report, I don't wanna say I have to. My role here is to approve it or not, and that it's pretty one directional. Is that, am I summarizing that correctly?
yes, to some extent, but I do also want to say that the people who prepare the report, they're very approachable. So you can really call them and ask the questions, but there's just not enough time to do that. There's so many things that need to be approved, discussed.
Okay. Well, and again, this is about us working towards moving those needles. So even if we're not gonna solve it in this instant, I'm definitely gonna capture it. So thank you for.
Thank you, Ken.
No, sure. I just a couple things in prep. Can you all fill me in on your committee structure, your board committee structure? What standing committees do you have? Or you don't have?
We don't. Board members are kind of designated as representatives to other committees, but we do not have standing board committees, except for none. I guess you designated me to help coordinate this when I was by myself.
About
Yeah.
ad hoc setup.
Okay, so one of the things that I want to talk about are when the meetings be fluid. If you had committees that were doing some of that work more intensely and that reported and made recommendations to the board. So then somebody would be fully involved. But let's start out just making sure we have a common understanding of let's start with the superintendent. I'm going to ask you to exaggerate to me the point because I can tell your approach is collaborative by nature. So I want you to pretend to be collaborative.
You
So what are the
Depends
areas?
on the circumstance. I
This
think we're gonna.
is just pretend. Okay, what are the areas that are yours, that don't belong to the board, where you have responsibility and authority? And you are the decision maker and the board does not have authority or responsibility.
Okay, if I'm gonna be totally
Well,
uncollaborative, I would look at code and I would list off the. Appeals for interdistrict transfers, appeals for expulsions.
So you're looking
You have,
for.
Charter, that's it.
We
this is
wanna hear
board.
yours.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everything, except for all those things, everything else is mine.
Everything else is yours.
Everything.
Tell me what everything else is.
Establishing, I mean, I'm not sure you call them, but general categories, where funding and energy is gonna go to try to increase learning for students.
So the priorities for the county
Priorities.
office of
Yeah,
education.
exactly, so,
What about your community schools? Are those yours or the board's?
they operate like a district school board does in terms of those schools.
So they are the board,
Yes.
for the board. And what I'm gonna do is point out areas where ambiguity is created. Because there's not a clear line internally. Okay, what about budget? Is that yours or theirs?
It is the superintendent's budget that requires approval from them.
Okay, does that give them a line item veto?
No,
Let's see, what about,
and that's not being collaborative.
I would
not,
think
it's just standard.
you would debate
Yeah,
that?
I would say that's. not-
Okay, we're gonna, no, I'm gonna give you a chance. Appreciate it. What about, let's see, textbooks?
Who's textbooks?
The adoption of textbooks both to the county office and your oversight of the districts. Yours or theirs?
For that's. Well, for the county operated schools, county community or runs community school, and those, the board has authority to adopt textbooks, I know. For textbooks for the 17 districts and that's up to other boards.
Okay, what about credentialing?
That's under my
It's
review.
you, okay. Okay, what about policies and procedures for the county office?
The ones that relate to the purview of the board are the board's policies and procedures, and then their superintendent's.
So really important distinction. So both, there's the board's and there's yours. Okay, what about LCAP?
My staff develops the LCAP for our county run schools. The board is charged with reviewing it and approving it.
Okay, great. You're gonna speak for your board? What's in your area that superintendent has no?
Well, interdistrict transfers,
Okay.
appeals, I mean, those are the main things that we do, I think, our policies and procedures, review and approval. As far as the budget goes, if we do have authority to approve the budget, then that means to me, and I don't know the education code, that we have authority to approve the budget in any way that we want. I think respecting the superintendent's proposal, is something that we take into consideration, but I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, that we should have the authority to pull out a line or correct a line with our board authority.
Okay, what else?
Well, approval of the LCAP, we mentioned that.
Salary.
Superintendent salary, which actually, I don't want to revisit that issue, but we weren't involved in setting the superintendent's salary, and it's still a sticky position.
You were not,
No.
not even approving
No.
Okay.
Well, it was that it was sent to the county, it was sent to the election committee by Mary Jane. And she didn't ask our opinion about the salary. And I did call that to question at the meeting when we talked about it. So I do think we do have approval of the superintendent's salary, I guess. You don't have authority of hiring and firing superintendent because they're an elected position.
Expulsion appeals,
Expulsion and appeals. What else?
property.
Property, like purchasing property, renovating property, bid proposals, these types of things, approval of a bid.
Okay. You're creating a major area.
That is the charter schools,
Oh, yeah.
we have authority over. And we've done a lot of that.
And breaking that into county operated charter schools. Countywide charters versus appeals of districts in.
That's correct.
Okay.
Um,
And can the superintendent make recommendations to lecturers?
I mean, formal recommendations in public. Okay. I don't know.
What do you think?
I would say no, but.
A recommendation is just a recommendation, it doesn't carry any weight. So they can say whatever they want.
It's an area.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay, so you basically are largely in agreement. You can see right at the top, the one area where there's a lack of clarity. And I'll give you my opinion, we can talk more about it, you're both right. I believe that a county board, and this is so ambiguous and all. I believe a county board can only make an overall recommendation on the budget. You take it, you leave it. But you can say, if you do this, the biggest example now that you're seeing across the state are labor agreements. If you do this labor agreement, you will put us in deficit. And so we can't approve or disapprove the labor agreement, but we will deny the budget. We will not approve the budget. And then you have all of the implications of so what if you don't approve the budget. And so what eventually impacts cash flow, because at some point you can stop checks from here. I've never heard of a county board doing that, but hypothetically you could. So
there's a way to attack one line by refusing the approval of the budget. That's what I was,
yeah.
Where we have that.
That's good.
But let me tell you, just one, let me tell you what we see. I don't like the adoption of this textbook. And so I'm going to deny the line item in the budget for textbooks, not because it impacts the overall budget, but because I don't like that text. That's just nonsense. So it really has to be something that you can demonstrate. And then even then, it's only a recommendation. It is only a recommendation. You cannot influence the line items of the budget except in your denial of the overall. I think that's been kind of time and time again.
But my understanding is that, or maybe it's just my opinion. That's based on the overall viability of the budget, not on a desire by a board member or a board to influence policy or the direction.
That's exactly right.
So like the labor agreement, for example, like if you approve the budget and it has a raise and you don't like the raise, that's in my view, that's too bad. Unless you can say, hey, if you give that raise, it's going to put you in the red, you're going to qualified status as a county office. My duty as a board member.
Who says you have to give any reason why you're not approving the budget?
You don't.
You know, you can still vote to not approve the budget regardless of what you find a problem with it. That's why I'm saying I still think you have authority in that. In a weird way. In a weird way. In the same way that the superintendent has authority over district transfers. You know, because they're set up at the inter-district transfer. And if they're negotiating everything outside and negotiating it one way or another, and you never hear about it, they've taken your authority away. So, you know, there's when I go to the dentist, I grab them by the shirt and I say, no, we're not gonna hurt each other. Right? So that's the extreme of the other example of the relationship. And then I really, really want to come back to what you brought up, Jill, because there is a really positive way that you can create ambiguity between the superintendent and the board. And that's, I will give you an example that I'm really proud of. I'm a mental health advocate, born and raised a mental health advocate. And our superintendent knows a lot about schools and a lot about community schools, but she doesn't know as much about mental health as I do.
And she allows me, invites me to come in and say the stuff that she can't always say. Which is, our county behavioral health department isn't supporting their schools. And these are the policies that they could be adopting to maximize federal dollars that they're choosing not to. Now, as elected, if she does that, she's probably gonna make a member of our board of supervisors. What are you doing to me? Right? I can't control that error. He just goes out and says that. So you're not just following the superintendent, but bringing initiatives that you feel like benefit the whole county. And then if the superintendent wants to do that, then you support that. That's a way that you can be out of your lane in a positive. I've seen that those societies where boards in public forum debate a policy matter that's not in their purview, come to a decision that they're gonna do something that they have no authority about, and now we're off to the races with the superintendent. I believe that should never happen. So we've got the lanes, we're pretty clear. The line item in the budget, I would encourage the board to consider sort of a line in the sand about publicly debating.
And I don't think we have,
Yeah.
to be quite honest. I'm not saying this because we're pulling line items out and causing chaos.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the overall authority, how we do have authority to deal with those things if we call them.
You will know about, you could probably name the county boards that go into line item of budget and that it's in their authority. And it in my mind, so I'm glad it's a very good story.
And
I want to share.
Yeah.
I do want to share that the person who prepares the budget for us, she actually does these office hours before the meeting. And there will be like 3 board members and we could answer questions and get clarification and stuff like that. That has been helpful.
Yeah, and along that line, I wanna share another county that we have worked with, so going to this concept of committees and working committees. Is they have a budget one. And it's for that purpose, to bring the board lens and to work with, and so your one-on-ones may be accomplishing this with the staff board person. But through that committee work, that committee is able to dive into the line items, to ask the questions, and then bring a recommendation to the board that whatever the host of issues are, whether they're labor or they're not being paid for something or some update, someone thinks a piece of equipment's up, whatever it might be, those things can be discussed and the reasoning behind them, so that when that does get to the full board, then the lane is really clear. Yeah.
Yes, we actually did have a budget committee and it was working fine, but we evolved into this other system of having our business officer have open office hours 2 times by Zoom, where any member could do that, basically have the same role as if they were on a budget committee. And that was one of the things we created in order to allow some of our board members who take up too much time at meetings arguing about line items to one board member to actually have a chance to ask to do that before the meeting. So it's an example of something that we actually created, which was great in order to help solve the problem we're having. So having a budget committee now would be counterproductive. I mean, we don't need to.
So let me play that to the end. So you've actually, from what I'm hearing, unless there's disagreement, what Marilyn has described as a system that you have found that works for you is being used to address some potential discord.
Yes.
The 6 of you are able to get your questions answered and vote on a budget.
Yes.
We have no problem voting on our budget. We just did it last month. I mean, we had, I think.
Yes, it was just the amount of time that would be taken up with.
One
Voted against it, you just for reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was limited to 2 minutes of comments, so. Or
We had a lot of hands.
It shortened the meetings.
It was not.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ken.
Yeah, no, so that was my next question was, do you want to get into committees and the relative pros and cons? Shall we jump into that or do?
Sure, yeah.
You've done it both ways. It's interesting. I do think most boards do use a budget committee not to so that they can understand and make a recommendation to take the pressure off the board, the members that aren't, about the level of detail that is sometimes involved, particularly as these budgets get more and more complex. I hear you say that this is working for you. I would caution that you may want to bring it back at the point where the budget becomes complex enough that that you want a recommendation to the board about the budget. Because you really don't want to be getting in the boardroom as a whole. And there are times when you want to not change a recommendation, but understand a line item. And there are times, frankly, that I mean, it's never happens to you, but where there's just an error. And board members will catch an error and say that you did this officer from being embarrassed. But it's just eyes on.
Yeah, what I would say about the process here, and because we were here kind of before John, we actually had a system set up at that time. And it was nice because we initially had the preliminary budget, then we got to absorb that and then go home for a couple of weeks. And that gave us a bunch of time to ask our email questions or ask questions to the finance folks. And those questions were shared with the entire board group. And so we all got to see each other's questions, and because we all had some of the same questions, and it was a nice back and forth that we all saw. That was actually working really well. So we didn't really have questions when we got back to the second meeting to approve the budget. What's happened more recently is that we left that process and we've kind of developed this newer process that Maryland's happened. But I had to ask at the meeting as the president, well, what happened to the last process? Why do we have a new process? I mean, and to me, so there wasn't really an educational process that this very important process was changing. And then that kind of goes on to leadership, at least that's the way that I saw it. You know, that it could have been explained that this is the set process. And I think probably it was. I'm not the most engaged of the board members. There's people who are doing much more than I'm doing. I'm just sitting on this seat right here right now. But I missed that little bit of like, we're changing the process, or if we're going to change the process, this is what we're thinking of how we should do it. What do you guys think? You know, and maybe this is where the collaborative concerns are coming up.
I mean, there are things about the way that you all do it that I really like. I haven't heard it before. But that I really like. The one thing that makes me cringe is that we have had from one or two members of the public 3 subpoenas for all of our emails.
Oh my God.
And so I'm so careful. I won't ask what somebody had for lunch in an email. She knows because anything, you know, if I develop a line item or if I question a line item, you question the line item, but then there ended up being this thing that happened. So that's the only thing that makes me a little uneasy.
Wait till they get into your iPhone.
They did ask for that, of course. Yeah. And I don't have business on the text.
I have a question.
My wife loved that.
I agree with what Curtis said. I think it's good just for process, if we make a shift, that there's awareness, but I was curious in the handbook. In the FAQ about budget, there was a little section here, which I'm just curious historically with MCOE. They've said that there's specifically an education code 1621 that gives the county board authority to designate spending on a discretionary budget basis. It sounded like a discretionary fund for priorities that the board has. But did I read that correctly? And has that ever happened here? Because it never came up until I read this. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
But actually, Daniel, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, my understanding of that provision is that the board can designate a particular fund for a particular purpose. And then money can be spent from that fund based on a majority vote. And I think at some point we had like a education protection account or something, if I'm remembering that right, maybe this was before my time.
I thought it was limited to board professional development or board, like
It
stuff.
wasn't written
Stuff
that way,
dealing
so
with just with
it was more about, for quote, for any specific purpose is determined by the county board. Yeah, they can, it's not a line item budget authority, it's more of an ability to designate a fund. Yeah, exactly. So like if the board, if we had a retreat and we said cell phones, educating Marin County about, the horrors of cell phones and trying to like help the community for young kids. And we said, this is a priority, we want to designate a fund to help do the county office do that, because again, we're not doing it at the county office. Right, this is where the lines get blurred though, because we're not telling the county office what to do, but apparently we can set aside money in the budget.
I don't know what the limits to that, because don't listen. Yeah, I think the board can say, we're gonna set aside, we're gonna set aside a $20 million fund.
To put the 10 commandments.
So
I'm serious, it's like, it's open-ended and open-ended funding, like, I wonder, that's problematic.
I think that's intended for board expense accounts and intended for very limited special. I didn't realize, it'd be interesting to actually look at the.
Yeah, I was looking at it. What page is that? Page 44. It is one of those, it was just gray ambiguous areas around the budget.
And we're in the process, we've actually started the process to engage whoever the select magic experts are that help produce this. To like do an update, so I will find that we need some clarity around that.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Well, let's talk just a little bit more, do you have a policy committee?
Right here.
They had an ad hoc policy, they just redid all their policies.
Yeah.
Through that.
These are just things that you really might want to consider because it expedites your process. The CSBA and now CCBE update their policy all the time. Every time there's a change, they put a basic update policy. It really expedites the process because you have a policy committee that reviews it. There's a first reading so that there's a chance to have people reflect on policies. And then the second reading is typically done on consent because any concerns have been dealt with outside. I know all these things create more work, but they also end up saving a lot of time, a lot of angst in the board meeting. And then, and maybe I can ask you to talk about this. I want you all to be aware of the restrictions or lack thereof on ad hoc committee. Are you comfortable speaking to that?
Sure, but what specifically are you looking
That they don't have to be annexed in the same way if it's a form of the board.
Right, ad hoc committees are not Brown Act committees, so if they're appointed by either the board or the board president, then they meet for a specific purpose, for a specific period of time, after which they disband. So one very common ad hoc committee that this board, I understand before my time, but has used is charter review. That when you have a charter come in, you've designated an ad hoc committee to review the charter. This committee does its work. It doesn't notice its meetings under the Brown Act. It can have more flexibility. And then when the charter work is done, the committee disbands.
Is that countywide charter approval ad hoc or appeal?
I believe we have not had a countywide charter submitted since
Okay.
the law changed for
So it's
countywide charter,
appeals.
so it's always been appeals.
But hypothetically, you could have a meeting decorum ad hoc committee that could designate very clearly what your expectations were. And then and rather than having that discussion with the full board, they come in with a recommendation. And the ad hoc committees can be used so well to deal with areas of ambiguity in this. That you don't wanna have to have a discussion that's wide open all over the place in public. And I'm not saying, oh, this is the way to get around the Brown, I'm saying this is a way to have an informal discussion about something that's not Brown Act regulated. You can't say, we're gonna have an ad hoc committee on how to vote on the charter school. And make a recommendation on how to vote, you can't do that. But there's a lot of other stuff that you can use an ad hoc committee, including, and I will, this is public, so we had an ad hoc committee to discuss sanctioning ordinance. And we actually made a decision not to sanction that ordinance.
So I had the privilege of being part of the ad hoc committee for finance, which is audit, budget, and also for the board policies. And now that I see that we do these office calls that Brianne does, I really like what she does because we get the opinion of everybody. And again, to Marilyn's point, it saves time in terms of a board member saying the items that she wants to have a question on and bringing that to the board. So I like the fact that we have the office hours. I really like the fact that we had a board ad hoc committee because especially with Marilyn, having her experience over 25 years of being a board member, she was able to really identify certain aspects of board policies that need to be amended or edited or whatever. And she has an English background. So I really find that ad hoc committee on the policies really well. The only thing is that all of a sudden, oh, there's no more committee, what else? So.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I love our budget committee, it saves us a ton of time, but I'm gonna go back and recommend our board that we use that exact same process. Even before the budget committee meeting, because it really does it saves so much time, even to the budget committee, because some of the things just stuff we don't understand.
And I think, not to speak for Bree in her absence, but I think part of the reason she came up with the office hours was because the committee itself wasn't as functional. Like the office hours she thought would work better. And I think we'd go back to a committee if that were the will of the board.
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk to the decorum process issue. So it's interesting you had an ad hoc committee sanctioning board member. Curtis, when you initially in January or started, you were very, very clear that if we all did not follow the basic rule, Robert's rules of order. So I'm not like you were going to, I don't know.
Sanction.
It was sanction, right?
Absolutely.
And so have you felt like nothing has reached that level of sanctioning, or is it that having an ad hoc?
I'm walking a very tightrope, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to not do that, but try to for some decorum and some appropriateness in the boardroom. And I think we've seen improvement over the last 6 months. So I'm backing off and, I don't want to give too much room.
We have, but we've also had canceled board meetings, which I guess isn't really sanctioning behavior, but someone, I mean, again, we all clear our calendars.
Right.
Staff all arrives. If we don't have the quorum, which we're trying, but things happen, she will not approve the agenda. And I guess that's not sanctioning behavior, but
then we kind of lean on staff to make sure that doesn't happen. Right, so that
But
was.
life happens, right? So you're coming to a meeting and then your car breaks down, your kid gets sick, I mean. Like,
You don't know what happens when you sanction a board.
what do you mean by sanction? Can we clarify?
It's the board makes a formal declaration that the behavior or actions of another board member was not appropriate for being board.
yeah, so like another example that's come up recently, I think it's our own bylaws. That was just recently clarified is an expectation that Marin County Office of Ed board members vote yea or nay. That we are here with the responsibility and to vote yea or nay and not abstain. And it was discussed, agreed, or acknowledged, but she will continue to want to abstain. And so that feels to me, if that's true, that's
Makes sense.
Yeah, I saw that in your in the prep work, and it's an interesting, I mean, it is an expectation. Any elected generally vote. I've not seen it stated quite that strong, but I want to come back to sanctioning. So what happens when you sanction someone? is absolutely not.
That's,
Right.
it's not a monetary sanction.
It is, but the
But it's
only
a
thing-
record in the
we-
minutes.
well, there's one other thing that happens.
No one's
Is if
gonna
it's
care.
publicly noticed, the press will always cover this. So that's the only other thing that happens.
Sometimes that emboldens people.
Yeah, if somebody wants the press.
Exactly, I know.
Then you play
Yeah.
right into their hand, yeah.
In terms of the abstention, I mean, I don't actually remember a discussion about that bylaw, and when I read it, it surprised me a little bit. If you feel like you don't have enough information to vote on something, you should be able to. I mean, I think people can take that to a level that isn't anticipated, but I don't know, I don't actually agree with that.
Or if you
Right.
genuinely don't have an opinion,
Right.
and you want the other members of the board who do to prevail. So you know, if you, especially if you're voting early, if you're the president, you're voting last, doesn't really matter. You
Right.
can- You can.
That's a
allow-
really good point,
But
too.
that was my only concern, that was exactly my concern, is there a time?
But it's a
when-
pattern, I mean, she's not even
That's
approving the
different,
agenda.
though. I know, but that's
Yeah,
different.
but you don't wanna
Different.
take your ability to do that away. In some ways, it disempowers the board member to abstain, so. You
And if
know,
the abstention doesn't affect the overall vote, who cares, right? I don't care.
Why
if
is this
someone-
affecting meetings, that was, which we were having, not having meetings.
Oh, yeah, well, she would vote no, I don't think she abstained, she votes no, so it's an abstention.
So I wonder, we're all saying these things about Nancy, which is really true, but I wonder whether somebody had already sat with her one-on-one and say, Nancy, these are the roles of a board member. These are your action items right now, which is contrary to the roles of the board member. So has that conversation occurred? And if it hasn't, who should have that conversation with Nancy?
I feel slightly uncomfortable having this conversation in a publicly recorded meeting, I frankly don't feel appropriate speaking frankly.
But let's change it, and let's say, if the board has a concern, and I'm reminding us that we're talking about roles and responsibilities. So we've moved from roles and responsibilities between the board and the superintendent to within the board, which is clearly the issue here. If there's a concern about roles and responsibilities of a board member, what's the process by which you as a board would address that both formally and informally? Because you're in a tough spot, right? If there's not a clear procedure, then you're in a position where you're sort of creating the rules as you go. But, for example, if you have an ad hoc committee that says, here are the questions. What happens, our policy and procedures committee, we had a problem with the attendance of a board member many years ago. The policies and procedures committee said, if you miss a board meeting without being excused, that you won't receive your salary. Apparently that's completely legitimate. You're being paid to attend a meeting, you don't get paid. Many people don't care, some do. But it also goes in the minutes, it's formally recognized, and most importantly, a subcommittee and ad hoc committee of the board has set up a procedure that you have to follow. And that is so freeing as a chair. It's like, I'm not making this up as I go along, we met, we decided this is what we're doing. Right? And we're doing it, it's you. It's you, I'm doing it if it's not you. Right? So you just may want to think about what are the procedures that you're following as a board that make these things really clear. I really respect and appreciate your point about airtime. Somebody's got something important to say. You don't want to artificially restrict that. There are plenty of ways that you can make sure, and you can make sure as chair, that occurs without giving carte blanche. And yeah.
All right.
That's really
So
tricky.
to be very specific, and this is just, if it's a procedure that, and a policy that we respect each other, okay? And our procedure is that we wait to be acknowledged by the board chair before we speak, okay? And then a board member speaks and does a run-on sentence that goes from subject to subject to subject. And it's very difficult to interrupt, but or does a follow-up sentence, a follow-up question before anybody can take a breath. And also, okay, so that is really hard. Everything you're saying, I'm with it, except that when you get down to what really happens in the room, it's not so easy.
I so appreciate it, man, and I so get it. Let's take this to public comment. Do time public comment.
Yeah.
What happens when the timer goes off?
Say thank
Yeah,
you for
thank you
your
very
comment.
And then they keep talking, what happens?
I think we have the ability to mute the mic.
But we don't,
Oh,
we haven't yet.
You could. You can,
but the,
and we've had to,
we tell it.
yeah, we've had to, or the board chair, and this is the downs. The board chair talks over the person, and now you've created a fight, you've got somebody that wants to fight. Welcome to the arena, folks, right?
Well, that's
Well, that's what's the.
Right, but if you have the ability as chair. For everybody, not for a single board member, for everybody, to mute their mic. And it's a clear expectation that happens every time. If you say, and this puts a lot of, you have to have somebody helping you to do this, puts a lot of heat on you, but if this is an ongoing problem. It's not just that you can mute the mic. You could have the ability to activate somebody's mic when you're ready.
She doesn't usually speak into the mic anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or you said,
Yeah,
oh,
that-
we have on and off switches.
But the public's not hearing.
Sometimes it's directed at us, I mean.
Yeah.
So I think we are doing better with this overall.
We are.
I mean, so I don't wanna belay it.
Yeah, if it's not an issue, then let's not.
It is an issue, I mean, the specific, if we're gonna get down to it, for me, the specific question is. How do you cut somebody off that will keep asking another question?
Right.
You know, that's just what happens, whether it's the podium, on a discussion on the finance, that, I mean, Nancy will just keep asking questions, knowing that. It's actually somebody else's turn. It's
Without
actually
even
very
without even-
without even,
Right.
you know, it just, and because she's an attorney, she has that gift of gab. You know, she can do that a bit better than I think a lot of us. So it's.
Trustee Sartori, What would happen, trustees Sartori, you have the floor, you have 2 minutes for your questions. So at the end of 2 minutes, then you're gonna run on sentence. Thank you, trustee Sartori.
I'm not.
I know, thank you so much for the
That you
feedback.
always cut me off when I'm trying to talk.
I'm sorry,
This
but
is
we've
sexist,
agreed at
and this
the
is
board.
offensive, and it's fine.
That we have 2 minutes each. Thank you so much, trustee Sartori.
And you have this retreat because of me.
Uh,
That's what she would say, right? This retreat is all because of me and I disagree with it.
Thank you so much, trustee Sartori, you had your 2 minutes. I mean, if it's, what I'm
I
saying
just have
is,
to keep going.
if the expectation. Is, and this is where there's a compromise now, because it means you give up some of your ability when you have something that's really important. And God knows that there are times when we really want a trustee to be able to say their piece. So you err towards the longer side, you say 3 minutes, but the expectation is for every board member. And then every board member honors it for a period of time until you have decorum.
But the board doesn't limit board members.
No, it's never.
There's nothing that stops, there's nothing.
Yeah, and so the issue that I think is.
Yeah.
Everyone point.
That's the
change.
problem.
Yeah.
You could choose to limit.
You absolutely could. And you could do it you could do it at the discretion of the chair. I don't like the chair to have that much heat on them, frankly. So you do it as a board vote. We're all agreeing to this as a matter of our own board decorum. And this is one of maybe 3 or 4 ideas that we could come up with. But what's going on right now? Working.
I mean, I think that potentially a board vote and also maybe just when you start the meeting, reinforcing a couple of the rules, possibly. You know, that you expect you will be the one when there are questions and comments, like she needs to get an acknowledgement from you, than just jumping right in before anyone's had a moment. And that one, whatever you
We
want
can
to say,
add that.
that you can try just to kind of like the start of the meeting as a reminder, or just this is, I don't know.
No, we had that for the public time, we did that for the public time, we didn't really direct it at the board.
Right.
You know, so we kind of went through that and I kind of stopped doing that script for the
I know.
public time because we're going to see a couple of our.
Regulars.
Regulars show up,
Maybe we need to
but
bring it back.
we can also do that.
It
for
might
the
just
board.
remind
So
everyone.
that's a good idea.
One of the things I noticed at a meeting, maybe it was February or it was earlier this year. There was a moment where one of our trustees started going on basically filibustering and no one did anything and she kind of ran out of gas. Like, I mean, we had to sit through it, but it was like, as long as there wasn't any pushback, it's like, okay, we've been through it, but let's move on.
And I don't ever feel like I don't have time, right? I feel like,
Right.
I think we just get irritated that one
Look at you.
person jumps on and
Yeah.
on and on, but it doesn't
Well,
affect
also
our
it just jumps in while other
Yeah.
people have
Yeah,
their
that's-
hand raised.
Yes.
Like that to me is just
rude.
Well,
Yeah.
as a chair, do you, when more than one hand is raised, I just do what I'm about to tell you not to do. Do you say, okay, Joe, then Cindy.
Yeah, he does.
So.
Yes.
and then-
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
But he
he's
would
really
say
good.
that, but then you'll have some board members not wait. You don't have to say that and just jump right
So
in.
another thing you can agree on, you'll be lucky at first. Is when you recognize Joe, you start to speak, and it does not matter for someone. You have the floor, it's yours, you own it. I really, even if muting mics doesn't work, I would mute that mic, I've recognized Jill.
That's a good idea.
You talk, we're all in agreement, this is what we're gonna do.
One other idea, I don't know, but I wonder about the way we're seated. That she actually, that certain board members can't see you,
Mhm.
and I wonder if that's an issue. So that, I don't know if we have to be seated in the way we are, but it might help if there's a
Maybe
line.
she sat where Lee usually
Yeah,
sits. Then
the chair, because there is a little bit of just looking out and not necessarily seeing your cue.
We had the opposite problem, we had very short board chair. And she.
We don't have that problem.
Yeah, we're very fortunate, but I almost got up and walked out of the meeting because for an entire meeting, she didn't recognize me. She couldn't see me,
Oh.
and I was just livid, like I'm, and so we finally had the person, both board members on the right hand left of her monitor that side of the room.
She needs like a push-up.
Yeah, she needed an elevator, that's what she needed. But those kinds of things, you know, you're managing.
Curtis did something to me that I thought and still think was effective, because I had a chance to ask a question. I actually had 3 questions which were interrelated. And so I said, okay, that's done. And then on the very same topic, I had another set of questions after other people had shared their questions. And Curtis had said to me, you've asked your questions. So I was like, okay. And I appreciated that, you know, I'm not taking it against Curtis.
Yeah, and while you're in this phase, you may just wanna overstructure. We're going to have one round of questions from the board, please ask your questions within 2 minutes. I know that I feel it's silly, but the alternative is silly.
Yeah, I think we came up with at least 2 things here, is that I need a little bit of a script at the beginning to address board member discussion rules or expectations, so I like that. I also think if it really gets out of hand, then in my back pocket, I don't know if we can vote on it at that time, but maybe we have to discuss, because we can't just vote on that because it's not on the agenda. Right, so we'd have to talk about that on another meeting to actually make a vote on limiting or setting people's time, I guess. But The other thing that's happened, it's not happening so much, is that there are personal attacks being thrown around at the
Yes.
board meeting. To Patty, to John, and specifically to me. So this board member, you know, I wish Nancy was here because this was the time to talk about all that, but she's actually throwing personal attacks at us about spending issues and accusations and all kinds of stuff. And including she filed the Freedom of Information Act to get records through the board. I mean, this is a trustee of our own organization that's trying to uncover things that aren't there. It's just very weird. So there isn't a lot of trust here with this person. So how do we dig deeper and deal with that?
Yeah, so.
I mean, I think that's why Patty's probably not engaged in, to be quite honest. Patty never missed meetings for that. You know, and Patty's just probably just had it. You know, that's very sad, right?
Yes.
You know, Patty's. You may know something different, but I don't know. I feel like we.
So let's, let's do a little serenity prayer moment. Right?
Done that before.
So you have control over a lot more, you as a board, not you. And to the degree that you all make it on your chair, you make the chair position until. So it's all of you. I mean, this is so much better than most of the situations that I've seen like this. Because in most of the situations, it's 4-3, it's 5-2. And so it's just far more complicated. But you actually have a unified supermajority. You don't have a majority, but a unified supermajority. So to the degree that you make a series of agreements among yourself as a board, including the members that are here today. Here are a series of agreements. They will be made by majority. We're gonna set up a committee. The ad hoc committee is going to ask the board. We're gonna ask that everybody adopt these rules and follow these rules, right? The chair isn't the only person that enforces them. But again, I've muted that back. And then you use the sanctions. And if you have to do that, there's only one power of the sanction, which is the power of press and how that deals with constituents. But those are the limits of what you can do.
And we've all talked about all of this, so
Yeah.
we appreciate you confirming or at least acknowledging.
Yeah.
That we do have that option, and I don't think we're gonna need to get there just because I see it improve.
Well, and I would also just make sure that you are applying these rules. You know, when someone's in a minority position, all they need to do is see you as the board members stretch those rules so it's no longer equitable.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the other problem with all get past the pretty expensive. And it works when everybody's collaborating. All right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is 10 minutes old, but so it relates to what we were talking about before, but I think it would help to put Nancy on the end seat so she can see all of us raising our hands. Because where she's sitting now, she can't see some of us raising our hands. And so to be more fair, let's giving her that opportunity to know other people want to speak. If she's on an end seat, then she can see everybody.
And an end seat would be like my seat and the one beside Jill. Jill.
You can put her by me.
Yeah.
I love that you
together.
just that.
As if I didn't know, all three of us.
It doesn't sound like that's the problem. But again, the chair is saying out loud, I've got Jill, then Cindy, then Lee. And
Just say, no, I just have one more question, sorry. Can you, that's a. I think.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm sure you.
And I do think it's starting to work. It's not always gonna be perfect, but I think the consistency, it kind of takes the wind out of some of the sails when they're, when the rules aren't consistent.
I think you've given us a couple of details that we can.
Yeah, thank you. It's all great.
So you're a teacher?
No.
Oh, okay. Anybody been a teacher? You have, okay.
The daughter of two teachers.
So you've set the rules, everybody in class knows what they are and you enforce them. That's one thing.
Quiet coyote.
Huh?
We try that.
Exactly,
Quiet coyote.
exactly.
Our kids learn that in preschool. Heard this. We're all gonna do this.
And
Quiet
more-
coyote.
That would be, actually, that would be.
That
the
was-
share.
Anyone?
I don't know about the rest of you, but it is break time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much, man.
During that, maybe we'll discuss one of two key topics here today, and we have a second topic to discuss, which is more relationship with the superintendent. Possibly looking back at our strategy and our plans. And I was suggesting that maybe we adjourn an hour early. In hope that we have enough time to discuss the second topic, and I just wanted to run that by the board. That at 2 o'clock adjourn time may be set for 1 o'clock. If that's something the board would be interested in. If not, then we'll move to the full group.
I think it's a good goal. I just don't want people to feel cut off. That would be my,
I think we're all here together and we should get as much time as we can.
All right, well, we'll see how it goes.
Okay, great. So what I, in that spirit, and what I would like to propose we do next is really dig in having a conversation about, let's look 6 months, a year, 18 months down the road from now, what do you want to accomplish as a board related to your lane, if we allow me to use that language. So, couple of things I want to look at, talking about expulsion, appeals, interdistrict transfers, board policies and procedures, superintendent. We got a lot of these up here this morning. So I realize I'm starting with a couple different questions here. Are you comfortable that the board is doing and has the knowledge it needs to carry these things out? Are there areas that you want to move the needle on one of them? Are some of these, like, I still don't know what that acronym means. So let me hear from you on these core areas, and I don't want to lose sight of the superintendent responsibility as well. But what I'd like to start a conversation with is, you know, the county board lane that you work in.
I think it's pretty clear what we need to do, and I appreciated at the last interdistrict transfer, mentioned to Danielle, the materials that you guys provided to us, made it really, really clear. There was a printout of our options, you know how we're sometimes writing on a post-it, whoever's gonna make a motion, so that felt really professional, smooth, easy. But I feel like our specific responsibilities, there's a system, it works. I don't think there's an area that needs to improve there.
For interdistrict transfers?
Generally, that category at the top,
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying generally. Where I feel like what we're missing, when we first had our call and you said, do you have a strategic plan?
Right.
And John Lenz said he didn't think there had been one. And whether that's for MCOE, like just their priorities. And I don't necessarily, I'm not a let's go create a whole plan necessarily, but what are our priorities as a board? That is a conversation that I've never been part of, and it would feel like my time is being spent where I'm advancing something than just approving interdistrict transfers and expulsions. So I would.
I second that.
You know, I mean, to me, it's a little interesting conversation here because we have certain responsibilities. We're in this organization that's been around for very many years. So we all have to sit here and ask ourselves, what is our responsibility? You know, to support the organization as it has been and to make little tweaks to keep it running as it should? Or are we here to bring out new initiatives to change the way we're doing things, to start new projects, to look at a different population that's maybe not been look, I mean, so I think there's two ways to look at this. And that might be some of the differences
Yeah,
here.
I
in
agree,
understanding,
I
right?
agree. And I wish it, to me, Marin County has such an opportunity because of the wealth in certain areas in Marin County, the ability to innovate in ways that other counties can't. So when you look at our public education system, and so I think, but as we talked about at the recent, there are gaps. There are areas that are not being served. Just our own community school, what is happening there? There's this opportunity to model to help others learn how, as counties are reinventing community education, and there's amazing leadership there and talent. So it'd feel like to be able to articulate in a shared way these 2 or 3 priorities. John has priorities, but they've been John's superintendent's priorities. Are they shared priorities of the board that we can get behind and have your back, as Ken was saying?
Oh, I like the board priority,
Yeah,
right, which is different than just operating
right.
the organization, right? And so, that's the new leadership.
So humor me for a second. Strategic planning often starts out with a look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So let's just take a few minutes here. Doesn't have to be long and involved, but I heard Cindy already start. There's a couple of opportunities here. Hub of innovation, got innovation in the region. And then also there's wealth in the area that could potentially support some new initiatives. So we don't need to start any particular place, but particular strengths, a weakness, an opportunity, any of you see?
I still think, I think there's still opportunity with Marin Community Foundation. And I only say this, and I don't know, John, how John's working specifically with MCF. But there was a time, when Mary Jane and Tom Peters were on the phone almost every day, and so, and I don't know if that still is a focus of the superintendent.
It's basically no longer an option.
Yeah, so,
Mary Jane and Tom are
I'm
good friends, and the new, after the new strategic plan at CF, I have trouble getting.
right, so then that's where your leadership comes in to change that relationship, right? So,
That superintendent relationship.
Feeling like a lot of organizations just take a number and good luck.
I mean, having sat on MCF, right, education and health are the reasons why they tried to get me off of that, because I'm a physician who's on the county board, and I was
But
actually.
they've deprioritized education.
Have they?
Yeah, they're working on climate change. Has
Yeah.
almost an end. Like a little bit of nibbling around the edges on education, but really a very clear message, including people who are in the organization who supported education not being there anymore. And they've just gone in a very different direction. I mean, we try to maintain a relationship, but there has not been.
We keep trying.
We'll keep trying.
Are there other places or organizations or communities where there's potential opportunities?
I think we have an opportunity within our own budget. We have a lot of money in our own budget that I believe could be used.
Is it fair to call that a surplus?
Yes, innovative ways to support Marin County schools.
When you're saying the we, it's not board, you're talking from the looking down at MCOE
Correct.
or Marin County.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not saying we as.
Yeah.
I'm saying we as MCO.
We have, just in terms of weaknesses, generally, there's a huge equity problem.
In the student population?
Yeah,
Countywide.
countywide, yeah, so Marin.
Well, it's countywide, but it also. We have a huge equity situation at MCOE as well, where our population of Black and brown children is far higher than none of the population in Marin County schools.
At our community schools.
Which leads me to believe that Black and brown children are being expelled at far higher rates than white students.
That's been documented.
This is not.
I mean, black people.
Should impress it, should work on it.
I'm also gonna put budget surplus over here.
Actually, I would put the community, or in community school. In, well, I put them in a lot of areas, but I would put them as a strength.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, you've seen the evolution of Marin's community school from its early days, 20 years ago. It was not anywhere you'd want to even visit, and now it's like,
Amazing.
it's beautiful.
It really is.
It gets sometimes you want to go there.
Are there additional opportunities there to expand what's being taught or offered, or?
I just feel our staff there, it would be, it doesn't feel right to me to not include them in that conversation, because they're sharp.
Yeah.
And very
Yeah.
thoughtful and have a great
Yeah.
vision for the place that's been exercised over many years.
Another strength that is unrecognized is student voice and how we can incorporate student voice into the work we do.
But that's not really a current strength. Right?
It's an opportunity.
Opportunity?
Yeah.
Let me ask you from my own background, are the foster students served in the districts or are they county?
We support their service, but they generally are in, they stay in their district of residence.
Okay.
Or district of origin.
And how
The
about,
juvenile justice youth?
Well, no, if they're incarcerated, then we operate the juvenile school.
Right, so there's a crossover there with this, a number of those youth will cross over between systems.
The foster care isn't specifically called out as something that we look at in one school or another.
so are there opportunities with the juvenile?
I wouldn't want to mess with it. I think it's.
We don't want to expand that.
Yeah,
We want it to just like this.
There are times where we have like, as
Yeah.
low as 2, maybe even 0 from time to time. Where
So let me play that to the other side. Are there strategies within the education ecosphere, if you will, that can be enhanced to keep kids from getting systems?
I think countywide with several agencies at the table, and we have very good collegial relationships with our districts, with law enforcement, district attorney's office, juvenile probation. We meet regularly, we all know each other. And I feel like we're doing really good work in that area. I don't know that a county board could step in and I mean, it might be worth learning more about how that works. We have a really vibrant school law enforcement partnership. How many meetings? We meet a lot.
Do the county board trustees members, do you regularly visit the schools under which?
You're regular.
Is there an opportunity there to do something more deliberate and structured?
We just had a board meeting where there was a tour, although that was the board meeting where
It got canceled.
Nancy, got canceled, so only a few of us went, but it was on the agenda. It's great.
We just built a new building at Marin's Community School, like a wellness center, to use facility, and it's beautiful.
So an example, like with priorities that I heard recently, Debbie probably has more info, but I think it's San Mateo is seeing in their, when they look at their county needs, they're seeing a lot of people losing their jobs because of, and they see this wave coming with AI. And so as the county office of ed, they are beginning to look at retraining training centers, how to help support and create resources. Is it San Mateo? Am I correct?
I know some are,
right.
but I don't know if it was San
So that's
Mateo.
an example of when I was talking to somebody from their board, he was saying, you know, we looked at what our needs are as a county. And this is, and it's education. It's not K-12 education. It's general, supporting career adult ed. And so that's a priority where they're doing some fundraising to help develop a training center to help the population. It felt to me coming onto this board that affordable housing, which is a huge issue in Marin, was one of the reasons why we have Oak Hill. And that was a great example of how the county office is being responsive to
A local
need.
Are there opportunities around the work you're doing with the Oak Hill project, or is that on its momentum and on its way?
I think it's kind of on
It's getting there.
way.
Yeah, this just had some setbacks in terms of interest rates and wars driving up fuel and that sort of thing, but it's moving forward.
Yeah, I think it will come back to this, it has to come back to this board before it can
Yeah.
really advance, so there will be more opportunity to engage there. I will just note, which you all know, but for your benefit, that's also a real point of contention between one board member and other board members, and it's an area where our meetings can tend to derail.
Fair enough. Marilyn,
Yes, you asked about our, and if we do visitations to our schools.
school tours?
And I think we could, I would love if we could, visit some of the other programs like Marindale and the, is it Ron? The one, see, I don't even know, no.
Compass Academy.
Huh?
Compass Academy?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, well, that's the new name for Braun.
Oh, sorry. No, the one that is for 18 to 22, the older kids.
Oh,
That-
Grant Rover.
Huh?
Grant Rover.
Yes, we did visit one time years and years and years ago, but I found it really helpful to visit to see the programs that we hear about, we see pictures. It made me feel much more involved, and we may see opportunities or ask questions that lead to different things because of that, so.
I also think there's some potential for improved morale with visits. Like whenever I visit those programs, there's always like, "Oh, that's great, you showed up." And I think it would be the same with the board.
Yeah, we have had like board meetings at Marindale. And it's just hard for the staff of those places, but if we arrange having like a meeting there, then that's one way, but just to find a way to visit would be.
This kind of, to me, has the sound of like an easy win. School tours. Okay. Other areas are, but threats or weaknesses, not, sometimes there's opportunity lying in those as well.
Can I just throw out under Marine, you talked about Marine Community Foundation and that they were a funder, but you also said that homeless youth is a target, or homeless populations are target. And I wonder if, because you're in the center of working with youth in foster care, working with youth and families that are unhoused. And I wonder if there might be an intersection there where you could re-engage with them around specifically homeless and foster youth or youth at risk of homelessness that are aging out of foster care. Lots of funding in those areas right now.
That's one of their new priorities.
Well, and I'm not the representative of MCF, but
No.
it's like writ large housing homelessness and climate change.
Housing homeless.
Yeah, so that's housing and homelessness, I guess is the way of phrasing it. But what I also think from my point of view, their plan is getting tighter and tighter, and they're going to be moving in some sort of direction that will probably be easier to understand later. We went through a process, I participated in it, where they interviewed stakeholders or whatever you want to call them, all over the county, and they did a big data gathering exercise to know what their priorities should be. Several people left the organization. The executive director came on board. A few of the same staff are still there, but has a very different feel.
I'm curious, Sean, are there priorities that you have that it would be helpful for the board to support when it comes to our students?
Yeah, well, maybe this is the time to, I think I feel like I'm very clear about And I think some of the board members weren't around when we talked about, when we voted on the mission statement a few years ago, 2 years ago, I think it was. That started to flash in my head. So there are priorities, and I'll say that there are moments, I think, because of changes on the board and just the tenor of things where there are priorities that I think are really important. And I had some, I wouldn't call it anxiety, but like I didn't want anyone to get in the way of certain things. So the best example I have is there's a big focus on evidence-based practices in reading, so science of reading, to use the popular term. There's controversy around that. I think the evidence is super clear that that is a really good way to address equity by having basically teaching kids how to read. There's debate about that, like where people have a different way of viewing it. And I didn't want to, and it sounds like I'm being not collaborative, but I don't want to collaborate with people who disagree on that topic. So I wanted to put time, energy, dollars behind those efforts. And I don't feel like I don't really want to have again, just putting it out there. I don't want to have argumentation about that that might distract us from that. So that's just one example. And I think that the experience with that has made me think, okay, well, there are these things, the three big things that I've been working on in terms of setting, I'm calling them leverage points rather than priorities, because there are other things that are super important as well. But Marin County has an issue, and I know this is my soapbox speech to some extent, that there's problems with access for early childhood education, and we know that's a way of leveraging future success for all students, and Marin just doesn't do a very good job at it. So a very difficult world to navigate because there's so many independent agencies that if I can influence them or we can influence them, that's hard. A lot of the time, we don't have to talk to us. They're about everything, like to try to engage to move things in the right direction and put dollars and energy behind early childhood is very important. We already talked about evidence-based literacy practices. And then lastly, I think, and this doesn't, I don't think it necessarily has to be in K through 12, but school to career pathways so kids stay engaged in school. I think those are the things that and I'm open to hearing counter arguments that those things aren't worth spending a whole bunch of time on, that maybe there's something else, but put a fair amount of thought into this and talk to a lot of other people, other superintendents and whoever else will listen. But those are ways where the evidence would suggest that we're going to increase equitable outcomes for students, and we're kind of those three things, and to stay focused on those. There's so many other things that we could be working on that might be great or that might not be so great, but I don't want to get distracted from those. And the way I look at it is like, I have 8 years to do this. So I don't want to be uncollaborative. I think by nature, I'm pretty collaborative, but like, I think on those things I have not entertained, like, hey, do you think it's okay to like do Lucy Calkins style reading instruction? I want to have a discussion. So those are sort of the main things. Then something else has come up. Well, I'll mention two things. After the pandemic, our mental health needs were really obvious. Like we're having problems with student mental health. And so prioritizing that wasn't something that I ran on per se, but that really rose up as something that was critically important. So we opened a whole new department of health safety and support, which grew out of the pandemic to support student mental health. The way I see that is really, and maybe I'm wrong about this framing, but it's all, I think it's a reasonable way to approach it. That's not like a student growth priority. That's like a response to a bad situation. Like we're working on helping kids who are in trouble, rather than the other three are like supporting best practices for increasing equity, especially in school around learning. And then the last one is that I feel like I'm sometimes not as, that I should brag about more, is our ongoing programs that I don't think get enough attention. Well, they get attention from me, but I don't go around going, look at our amazing special ed folks, look at Marin's community school, all this stuff that we've been doing since before I got there. So I should probably give more oxygen to that, or at least in my communications with the board and the public. Like, I try to do that. Those other things
Can I ask a question? Sorry, this is more from my education, but based on what you've just said, like when you say like in your 8 years, like do you actually, I'm just curious, are there actual goals of like what you want to have changed?
That's a really good question, and I struggle with that. It's almost, it's difficult, if not impossible, to know or to be. I don't have a measurement tool for like let's take literacy, for example. I believe that if we do a better job teaching kids in Marin how to read, that we're going to see better reading. How we measure that, I don't know. We can say, all right, we can look at our statewide
But in
test
terms
score,
of,
but that's not super.
But what about like the plans, how you're gonna get there? Like you're, like MCOE is gonna do X, Y, and Z in the name of advancing early childhood ed. Is
Yeah.
there?
To a greater and less extent, depending on what the category is. So for early childhood, for example, it's a very chaotic universe, and I never know. It's really hard to track what's going to happen. So that I feel like it's more like be vigilant, and when there's an opportunity to act than to act. But to have our ACE folks, for example, if there's an opportunity to get more state funded preschool slots, like that's not something I can plan, but when that opportunity comes up, I want to be able to like have the team go in and make sure that gets executed. It's easier with literacy. So we have like Laura Trahan's office. There, we've hired people to help with to actually manage all the literacy work, and there's way more of a strategic. Let's start with the basics and move on, and then basically try to get as many teachers trained in science of reading practices as possible. And then also with career education, a lot of that's based on opportunity too. Like things come up where we can jump in, but also Jesse's office is really good at like looking ahead what might come our way. But it isn't like it's finding that like that scientific like, okay, if we do this, we're going to achieve that goal. It's just really hard to say when something like even if reading scores on the statewide test spike next year, I don't think it's right for us to take credit for it.
Mhm.
Even though I might think we probably had a positive effect, but we do look at like individual schools. We hear feedback from teachers who are attending our workshops, and we hear from them that things are going great, but that's not very scientific. Data-driven instruction.
So I just want to jump in here to share one thing. So it was actually San Mateo I was working with. One of the things that came out of their strategic planning session was a goal, and they're working on with their staff teams a process for the board to, I don't want to mischaracterize this, but basically for the board to go out and promote what the county office is doing. So their marketing department is equipping them with like a one pager, speaking points and leave behind, telling them, here's when these various allied groups are meeting, just really serving as a public face. And I bring this up, John, because you mentioned about this visibility of the COE and what you're doing. That's all. That was actually something that Tim and Tate had been doing. They saw a lot of value in it, and so they're, after not doing of course COVID, we did everything. So they're re-energizing that effort and updating the materials and coming up with plans where they can support the superintendent staff and going out and giving visibility.
It might be worth noting about that there's and I'd like to ask John to like stop me if I'm too far. But under the previous superintendent, who I have all respect for, I think the general philosophy was don't take any credit, make it look like everyone else is doing the work, have a lot of humility. Whenever something goes great, say, oh, it's all about that school district, whatever. I feel like, I kind of like adopted that, and I think we could do a lot better and make a bigger difference if we had a higher profile and when something is going great. Not to be like, oh, it's all about me or all about us, but also, give our staff and the people behind it some credit. Like the reading thing, for example, I think is great. We just had another reading institute where I think we had 400 people paid for, stipended for the day, and it went great. And I don't want to just say, oh, it's all about them showing up. It was about them showing up. It was also about our team doing like phenomenally good work. And I think letting the public know that, like sort of your tax dollars at work, I think we need to go farther.
You're here.
You're
not right.
Yeah, but that was, I think, sort of institutionally frowned upon for a while.
Well, I just said
It
from
took me 3 years to let go. Okay, let's shift it.
from a CCBE standpoint, one of the core issues we are working on the benefit, for the benefit of county boards is, what does a county board do?
Mhm.
I mean, I have to confess, when I stepped into this role last September and my dad served on the school board, I didn't know the difference. This has just opened a whole new world for me. And possibly even board members that are sitting on boards today, you know, so it's very different. So I think the fact of giving visibility to the value of the county board and what they do and their responsibility, I think it serves everyone well, including the community which you serve. So, and then just one more ACCBE pitch. We're actually doing a webinar in August. That is a panel presentation on how to do, you know, examples of how groups have done engaging in their community, and even things like Rotary and other groups that, you know, are interested in either kids or education or literacy. So there's a free webinar coming in August for that.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
go on some.
I do feel there's, because of the talent at MCOE, I feel like the talent has an opportunity to share out beyond Marin some of what we're doing. And I think we're just missing that level of leadership that is a recognition for the team members, but it's also like, why keep it here?
Yeah.
I look at Katie Foster and what she's doing. I'm like, a lot of other, I mean, and I know she's got her peers she's sharing with, but other county boards could be aware of this and point to it as a model. Sorry.
No, I think that's right. I mean, it's just being on different boards and watching different leadership styles, right?
Yeah.
And then so I get to, because I was on MCF, been on the county school board, I was on a couple insurance boards and just watching the leadership. And so I would say, John, that so if you have a specific goal or something that you want the county board to achieve during your tenure here, that it's not going to be as successful without our support. Okay. And so for me to hear that you kind of are cautious about letting us in on this goal, these goals of reading, I would say that's not the right way that I would see it to be done. And that I would love that we would share a common goal, the board and you know, and that's how we would actually make it stronger for you. And if we can all sit here and actually talk about this goal or bring up another goal and we're all in unison, that's actually how we achieve change. So it's just an insight.
And there's a difference, like when you bring up Lucy Calkins, I can't even imagine that would be an appropriate conversation at a board level, because we don't have the subject matter expertise on this board. You do, you have people who have, but it's more about educating us and having that conversation of why this is important, why we should be out there, whether it's in our visibility.
Development. I mean, and we can all get around that. We know the importance of that,
right?
In teaching 2 and 3-year-olds to read. I mean, that's really important for 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. I mean, I'm speaking Jamaica, where all the damn kids read at 2, you know, from Jamaica.
Right, the long-term effects of
It's
early reading.
The one other thing that's come up, so when I was trying to like learn about best practices, how I could be a good board member, and I talked to a couple of people on other boards. Someone said you should have coffee with your constituents, and John said, well, you don't just have people in your area, you need to send the email out to everyone. So I was like, oh my God, here we go. Well, guess not many responded, so I had about 5 or 6 coffees, but all around Marin. It's very interesting. And the theme that came out, first they'd asked me what the county office priorities were, and I was just, I want to be able to like have us all unified on this is what we're working on. But there are also the other district board members that I met with said to me they felt like I haven't gone to the, what is it called, the effectiveness and
PEE,
that committee. And I get it, I hear the reports, but they just felt like we are really missing an opportunity, Marin, even greater shared systems. And I know that's the goal of that committee, but just there's so much redundancy. Some districts are struggling. And so it's just this constant like theme of what can you do at the county office to do more, to help look at shared HR, for example, was one that came up that, again, maybe that committee's working on.
Yeah.
but I just putting that out there.
It's also really helpful to go to your local district board meetings. So I go to the Shoreline board meetings in the Casio. And hearing what they're struggling with is really helpful, and I really appreciate it when someone cares and wants to listen, and even if I don't have any answers for them, just connecting with your constituents is really, really important.
I appreciate the conversation, just the openness and the conversation, John, that we're having here, because it's just, I think that's the first step, you know?
It feels really good to me.
Yeah.
And and a lot of it, I think I was just sort of, I feel like I'm hoping we're at a point where, I can be sort of more overtly collaborative, but I was protective of things that because there's some things are controversial, but it's science reading, not everybody. We're preparing for pushback on it, hard pushback, and it didn't come. Teachers were like, "This is awesome!" Like I didn't get any negative anything. It was like a real surprise. So I was very cautious about like doing anything besides like being on moving forward with that. And then early childhood, even though we all know it's great and very important, there's not everybody agrees how much funding should go into it, and that maybe, you know, in the K-12 system, why are we even bothering with this TK thing? And you know, 12th grade is as important as preschool, which I disagree with. Like I want to like stay on track with that. But I think I think in order to maximize the strength of the board, like having those conversations and getting us all like with a shared understanding, I think I can be a lot less nervous about that, because I've had arguments with like high school administrators who are like, I don't know why you're spending so much time with preschool. We got to get kids into college. Well,
To follow up on that, and this is something Ken and I had a sidebar on, just to put it out there. I'm gonna put it on the board, but something I think to think about and work out with Danielle is I'm seeing and hearing an opportunity for you all to be able to get together. I'm gonna say informally, like in a non-public setting that's compliant, to have workshops around these issues. Where you can share, John, transparently, you know, the struggles you have, whether it's, you know, pushback or whatever, and the board can share about, you know, whether, oh, we don't understand how this applies, or, you know, maybe we disagree on the issue. So I'm just gonna put that out there, because when we did this with San Mateo, it was the meeting opened and then it went to a workshop. And so it was open to the public, but it was not recorded.
And maybe this is just me processing my past a little bit. Having been a district superintendent for 10 years, there were things that to me made, and I would say I try to be evidence-based. Evidence would suggest we should do something, and I get it to basically board micromanagement telling me, oh no, we need to not do that. We need to do this, and sometimes to an absurd level. Like, and then because the board was my boss, I kind of had to like work around that somehow and try to do what often resulted in sort of a half-hearted attempt to do the right thing. And so it's very freeing to be the county superintendent. I can just go, no board, let's go, let's do what's right for kids. And if people don't like that, they're gonna vote them next time. So I think I came into it with this bit of fear of having been micromanaged. I had 2 districts, so I had 10 board members, some of whom had opinions that were, you know, I ultimately told them, you know, we'll never agree.
Fair enough. Yeah, getting back to what we were saying about the public knowing more about what we're doing, I want to say 2 things. One, the few times that you've had a Marine voice in the IJ, I felt really proud. You did a fabulous job. And each time it was promoting something. I don't remember what they all were. I just remember how it made me feel. That's a thing, right? You don't remember the thing, but you remember how it made you feel. And it made me feel really proud. And the second thing I wanted to ask, do we have anybody, any staff member whose job it is at all to look out for PR opportunities? we have like a, not just necessarily just media relations, but just actually, like, for example, if we're doing this really fabulous, successful workshop about reading, like, oh my God, that's really interesting to people to know that we do that.
Surprise, we do.
We do.
Yeah, we just hired somebody who's gonna be, and just came on board, and that's gonna report out at our next meeting. Hopefully about that. So,
Yeah. NPR is,
it's an approved position by the personnel commission, I forget.
Director.
Director.
Sounds,
Yeah,
she came from SM.
okay.
Yeah, we coached her from San Francisco. She just started last week. So getting her feet wet, coming up with a, what a goal out to, I guess you could call it a strategic plan to do something.
Can I ask, I'm just curious, Ken, how Alameda, does Alameda have board priorities? Just this conversation that we're having?
We don't have board priorities about because the superintendent actually actively engages us in her priorities, and it is it is exceedingly clear that her priorities as it relates to those areas that are not in our jurisdiction are our priorities. So she'll
Leadership, right?
well, I just asked, John, I want you to take a second to take in. I mean, I've just been sitting here watching this going, this does not happen all the time. So you have a board that's exceedingly deeply, strongly behind you. And there's not been I was waiting to hear it, a single suggestion of a priority that's different from yours. I mean, the level of alignment is kind of remarkable. And you can use them to be your ambassadors without any anxiety or fear. Having worked with many other boards, it is kind of remarkable. And I think some of the discord has probably shadowed the fact that you really have a unified board that's strongly aligned with your values, and that's a wonderful thing.
It's always.
Light bulb, because you're pointing out something where so focused on the discord that we have lost.
Yeah.
The fact that of what you just said, that this is an extremely unified board of 6.
You even like each other. I mean.
Patty is not here. We adore Patty. We like each other, and I think we all bring different strengths, which is a strength.
That
right?
is a strength.
The diversity is our strength, and I thank you so much for pointing that out, because I think a lot of us don't want to complain to our families. What do we do then now?
Yes.
I'm going to share a great strength of our board, and thank you.
Yeah, I think in some ways it's lucky that because we might not have ever gotten to strategic planning because there are other issues that are I think kind of out front. But we went through all of the areas where there's typically some contention. Even the budget process, generally broad agreement, interdistrict, broad agreement, charter reviews, broad agreement, roles, broad agreement. And yes, do you have some outlier process issues? And they really are only process issues because you have such a supermajority. They are only process issues. They aren't content issues. So you guys are good.
Always been aligned.
Yeah.
I mean, we've always been aligned. It's only that we've had one person, again, that's disrupted that alignment and made us question our alignment.
Yeah.
Okay, and clearly we're questioning it, but that's not the way to move forward. It's not the way to achieve some of these amazing goals, right? We can't do it in separate venues. We actually have to do it together.
So John did a lot here to share, I think, not only from your heart, but what your real vision is for what you're doing with the county office. So I'd like to hear a little bit more from the board. And again, John, there's an area to work on or negotiate later or reshape what that looks like. But are there particularly any of these areas? We did talk about this visibility of the CFE, and I have still on our actions about
coming up with a plan, and I can't believe you just hired a communications person, so that. Unbeknownst to all of us, that's got legs and is probably running. But are there others of these that the board is like, on this particular? I know Johnny said there's issues around science reading, but maybe, school to career pathways.
Yeah, under the mental health bucket, I would add, cell phones in schools. That's a huge issue, that schools, well, around the world are grappling with. And science, I think, has developed to a point where there isn't a legitimate argument, against banning cell phones in school. We're seeing great results from districts that are doing that in terms of higher test scores, greater engagement, less mental health struggles. So I think the county has a huge opportunity to be a leader and support districts in educating parents and students about the harms, providing them the tools they need to implement really strong policies, and then providing funds if they need them to buy things like yonder bags or specific training for teachers or whatever they need to implement those policies in a really constructive way to get buy-in from their communities.
And I'm gonna, John, I'm super honest. Do you have any issue with what she just said? Any problem or concern about that? I'm just gonna use this as an example.
I think I have a comment. I think we have a meeting next Tuesday to review what we've learned from the superintendent's group. The superintendent's academy monthly. We have some interesting feedback about that, and without getting into a big discussion of the details of that, what we heard was it's not just cell phones, it's ed technology. And the response, if I can sort of paraphrase what 10 superintendent said, was, of course, the cell phone, you're right about that. Like we gotta get rid of cell phones. But they went right into like, but it's about education technology, and why were we talking about cell phones? That's settled business. It's kind of
My point there,
Cell phones and their
if I may for one second, my point is you have a board member who you could easily align on your views that's passionate about an issue. And that's the kind of thing that goes beyond the traditional partnership that would provide tremendous value for you because it's something you're passionate about and you could engage and you wouldn't have to spend all your time on it.
Part of it, and I think this is a bigger conversation. I think there are three of us involved in that, and we got this as well next week. The effects of putting money toward it for some districts and potentially not others is something I think we have to have a big discussion about, and the feedback that superintendents and districts would give us about that. But the concept that cell phones, but definitely it was not just cell phones. It was like, why are we even talking about cell phones? Was like that's the one. And they all agree that cell phones are an appropriate school. Not every board has a policy that reflects that 100% yet. We have some that have 100% ban and cell phones get locked up. Others are, they let kids have cell phones during passing periods, which I think is unhealthy. How we make that happen and maintain our relationships with those superintendents and those boards, I think is something bigger. So it doesn't look like we got it.
Yeah.
Right, but we could come up with some best practices.
For sure.
And draw up a resolution, draw up a policy, get the newspapers involved, say this is our statement.
Yeah.
We can all be unified around some basics around
Exactly.
which we don't have to get into the details so much, but we can surely present.
But we
a
take a
united
stand,
front. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
And we're supporting districts as they try to develop policies that are healthier for kids.
Yeah, but I also think there's a desire that we share, which is we want to push districts toward cell phone.
Right.
We don't want cell phones in kids' hands at school. And that's and I think all of our districts are there philosophically. I don't think they've all gotten there in terms of practice.
But they can talk.
They're close. I don't think it's much of a push to get them
They need
past.
for help.
And John, they can talk board to board where you really can't do that.
Yeah.
So we could-
One other thing, just on under mental health, the rollout of the standardized schedule of rates is really closely related to this in terms of an opportunity to integrate mental health into schools that we've never had before. And it's very appropriate for counties to be involved in that because it's the county health department that's got to partner to roll that out. So that's another place where you all have an opportunity to engage. And you've got money that's OP money, which is my favorite kind, other people's.
And just one other, John, if you weren't already aware, the superintendent at Stanislaus has done a tremendous amount in 2 years when I'm talking about the cell phones in school and the anxious generation report. So. You said Stanislaus?
Yeah, he's a terrific speaker on the topic.
Kuykendall, why can't I think of his first name?
Is it Aaron
No,
or his sister?
Scott Kuykendall. They pick him and mistake calling him Steve, and it's Scott.
Vice versa.
Real quick, Lee, before I call on you, Ken, did I get this right? The schedule standard rate?
Standardized schedule of rates. Either way, everybody will know what you mean.
Sorry, Lee?
I was just thinking, I think we have a good relationship with Rob DiVincenzi at Marine IJ, right?
Thanks, sir.
And their writers, and I think we should explore that a lot more so that we can put what MCOE does more on the front line.
And we also have a really good relationship with the regular IJ education reporter.
Yeah.
She, and that's, not everybody has that, but we get pretty positive press from her, and other districts complain a bit. So we put a lot of effort into that. But just by being responsive, like return phone calls, goes a long way.
Amazing what that does.
I would just one note, when you describe Mary Jane Burke's position, to me, as an outsider, I felt Marin County Office of Ed was very strong under her leadership on behalf of schools of Marin. So however she didn't if she had a strategy of we're not going to take credit for what Mill Valley's doing, I still felt like schools rule was a little bit a part of that. I'm going to uplift all schools, but that there was also she was out there a lot. That felt like, again, it kind of the tide, what is the expression, rises all boats. So I didn't feel like MCOE was not, sitting in the background, not getting out there, quietly, we're not going to take credit. I actually felt like as a brand, it was pretty.
It was the top one in the state, MCOE.
Yeah, so I just, for what it's worth, and obviously you're different people and there are different strategies, and it's a different time, but I think, yes, it should be a strong brand. People who live in Marin should be really proud of public education, and MCOE has a role to play there.
I also think that, Mary Jane was with the MCOE for, again, 20 plus years, and John is running on 4th year. And so there's still a lot of relationships that need to be developed. And a lot of executives out there would probably really want to be engaged with you. So we should start trying to do that more.
Well, next 28 years, maybe I'll run.
Marilyn? Yeah, I just want to point out, I think there's still a big difference between what we're talking about now and that, because I think you're right about the visibility, but it was general. It was, MCOE is involved somehow. But the specific wonderful programs and the really good things that we're doing were not part of what got visible. People do not know.
That is true.
They absolutely do not know. They do not know what we do.
I agree. But I would actually really encourage a very careful balance that does not just be about our programs.
Right,
To me, the goal of MCOE is to celebrate education across our whole county. And, and we can do things with your, position you're in that elevate and celebrate the successes.
I want to point out one more thing that's so cool. And that, I don't know if you guys know, but we have a very strong Marin County School Boards organization, because we have 17 school districts, and we are a cohesive group of trustees and I have heard over and over how much that just through the trustees, how much they appreciate what MCOE does. Because they know that the districts, the people who work in the districts, especially at the administrative levels, and the trustees who've been there a while, they really get how supportive and amazing we are and are so appreciative. And, you know, that doesn't get spread out, but I just want you all to feel good about that because I think that the district offices all feel very, very supported, and I'm really proud of that. Do you agree, John, with that?
Yeah,
I mean, because
I do, I think.
I hear it a
Well,
lot.
I also have to be careful because I think people who give me feedback are probably more likely to give me good feedback than negative feedback. But I do get when something goes wrong or when someone has a disagreement, there are enough people on our staff who will let me know that. And usually it's around, you know, sometimes something like, well, too bad. You know?
Yeah, John, that more likely positive feedback is not necessarily the rule.
Yeah.
Trust me,
Yeah. Yeah.
read the Alameda newspapers.
I try to be as I want to listen to negative feedback too, and what I do hear that's negative is often something I'm okay with, like you know, placing a financial expert in a district that's in qualified budget status. The district staff might not like that, but I'm like, okay, well, get a bunch together, we won't be doing that anymore. So there's some of that sort of thing, but in general, I think we get a lot of appreciation for the. I'm like, and I'm like, I'm not going to take credit for this, but like when something happens, like there's some sort of tragedy or HSS mental health folks, and just like, and you know, we hear from all kinds of people. Like, thank God you're there. And the science of reading too. We have like just like amazing feedback about that. So that's pretty good too.
I'd like to keep this discussion going, but I think we got a natural spot to break for our lunch, which looks like it, right? Is that right? Awesome. Are there names on them? Okay. Yeah. All right, let's take 5-10 minutes, grab our lunch, pressure drink, and then we'll keep this conversation going.
Why don't we do a working lunch?
Yeah, it is. How you handle a public meeting process, and then providing a script as well for the president. You know, what that looks like, to be able to be reiterated at the start of each meeting and possibly during it. Had a conversation about maybe even reorganizing the layout of the room, being acknowledged, time limits. So again, this very well could be the situation where you decide to push the pendulum over far until this protocol becomes something that's more habit. Again, or I wrote here, acknowledge the structure of rigid until the practice itself ingrains. And then moving into that working relationship with the superintendent, being strategic as a board, looking at a set of articulated or shared goals. And let's spend a little bit more time on this today before we leave. I know we've got some over here on this board, we'll talk about this in a minute. Then we talked about this community interface, captured some of your notes here about there's more to work on with the relationship with IJ, some of the reporters there. And then this conversation around giving visibility to NCOE programs, as well as where NCOE they're finding that balance. And then creating a plan, a minute ago, for you to be able to meet informal. We talked about the tech ed. The mental health, standard rates, literacy in the science of reading, the visibility of the COE. This is a good chunk. I want to really spend some time here to think through. I don't want to say it's or hold your peace, but if there's something we want to talk about as a group that we think would be a good either shared priority or a priority that the board would like to elevate. And while that question sits with you, just to project here, what I'm gonna do with all of this is I will create up notes from the session, summary for you. And I will work up I'm gonna say strategic plan in lowercase letters, sort of a framework for you to work with these items with suggested next steps. And then also do an evaluation. We'll send out a little Google poll. So I'll draft that up and circulate that. Curtis back to our committee, so you guys can look at it and be happy to send that out. So we can. If you're anything like me, you'll be on the ride home and go, I wish I had mentioned. So you can either jot it on the evaluation or feel free to email me separately. And
I just had a couple questions that I want to clarify. And by the way, she does really good notes and plans, so that will be helpful. In the meetings that I watched, there were some meetings where you did not have all of your board members present. How often does that occur? And we don't have to answer this now. And what's your policy about virtual attendance? Do you follow the state guidelines about that, or do you have a separate policy?
You have a policy on virtual attendance that I think both Cindy and I have taken advantage of when you've been traveling.
So you can't, okay,
You can.
okay.
You pick her.
So not how often do you not have a quorum, but how often do you not have six or seven members present? Is that a fairly common, or did I just see idiosyncratic occurrences?
I think it's very common that we don't have seven.
How often do you not have six?
50% of the time.
So,
Notable number.
Yeah,
one of the things that I would ask you to consider from my observations of both the process today and the problems is that that you really may want to think really strongly about how you can make sure that you always have at least six board members present. I think I know it's difficult, but I can also tell you that it is a very unusual occurrence on my board to have two board members absent, and almost never happens where we even meet with four board members present. And I do think that some of the majority expression doesn't occur as one of the meetings. I saw two meetings where one abstention meant that you couldn't, or one no meant you couldn't approve an agenda. And I think, I'm sure you've talked about this, but I think you want to avoid that at all costs, and maybe virtual attendance encouragement would be a way to do that, but.
We've talked about it.
Okay.
Now, proactively reaching out to confirm attendance.
That's.
And so the hope is, because it is shocking that we find ourselves in this situation, and the hope is that's not going to happen.
I mean, you may want to have at least an informal policy that you simply don't.
John. No, we have a policy. Yes, we have a policy, we'll have at least 5 board members present.
You do, okay. All right, so you.
we also have an absence policy.
We do.
What's the absence? If you miss more than 2 meetings in a row, isn't there something about that?
Oh, we just have a bylaw that says the board will consider you not fully engaging the duties of the board member if you missed.
Yeah,
Your behavior.
yeah. All right, so this is, I was fairly sure that you probably were addressing this, and I'm obviously it's become more acute in recent months. When you can't get an agenda approved without a unanimous vote of the parties present. So that answers my question.
I would just suggest that, I think this is where you were going, Debbie, but that we really, I think we really prioritize, like we pick one, two priority, like one, like, and that, maybe it's two, because one is about improving our board processes. And then we have so much opportunity to get better, which was the goal of the survey. When you look at where we are based on what everyone responded, like my hope is, so a year from now, we will take a survey and there will be meaningful improvement in people's feelings about the how the board functions and what the board is doing. Like I just, but the good news is it can only go up. But I would just prioritize that we don't, I don't know what your notes are gonna say, but that there's kind of an emphasis on one area so we can like begin to try this out and feel good about making progress.
Cindy, I'm a big fan of clear goals, and you just articulated one beautifully. I mean, that's just the survey that you took is one where I would expect to see higher levels of consensus given what I saw here. So it seems like that's a low-hanging fruit goal, and to articulate it, if you all agree on it, would be, I think, a worthwhile thing to do.
And just FYI, Spain just got a goal.
Oh,
Not
now you're
practice.
you're almost.
Actually, in my mind, I'm thinking, so I looked at the evaluation, the report, and I kind of sort of did a chart of what are the issues where there was majority of disagreement, where there was majority of basically neutral, and then where there was a majority of approval. And I wonder whether, based on what you have seen in our interaction right now, would you say that the evaluation that came out from the questionnaire is in line with who we are as board members and our characteristics and how to respond to what we think are truly the needs of the board right now? And I ask that question because when I look at the result, I almost feel like, this is a switch from what the responses are to how I see everybody engaged in coming up with a solution to whatever problems we may have.
Yeah, and that's to my earlier comment about creating that space, whether it's quarterly or whatever, for you all to get together and like have these kinds of discussions. Because that monthly board meeting you have structured and have rules around it, and it is its own thing.
Yes.
But you are a group of individuals that have thoughts and ideas, and around collaboration and creating space to have that conversation. Yeah, I agree with you that what a lot of what I heard today, I don't want to say is in direct opposition to what those findings show, but what I'm hearing is that there was able to be dialogue around it and shared understanding. So to Cindy's point, I think I don't even know if there's a way here to take that. Maybe in 6 months you retake the survey.
It also, if I may, it reflects that there is one, and it's not one member, it's one process point that is disrupting the accord that you all experience. And so when if you went back and looked at the surveys, I am absolutely sure that they would reflect people's different views about your process, as opposed to about content. I mean, if 3 of your members think that you should uphold district's decisions on charters, and 4 of your members think you never should, you have a content difference, you have a political difference, you have, and that would reflect. You don't have any of that. There's nothing that came up where, I think this person uses the process unfairly, I think this person over advantages districts or students. There's none of that. So you're dealing with a very specific problem that's manifesting itself across all the different areas that you were measuring in that
That's
survey.
very disruptive and very difficult,
Yeah.
and that's why we're here. That's why it's unfortunate.
Yeah, but
I mean, so we can, I mean, I think we're moving beyond that, but it is unfortunate. Because that is the disruptor of our organization right now. It really is. You know, if you take that apple out of the mix, we're all unified, we're all heading in the same direction. We probably could work more collaboratively, be more open with ourselves and our comment. I mean, it's just the one apple doesn't fill the batch.
And you don't think that this process will help you deal with that as it comes up?
Only those few specific things that I
That's
put
it.
in my pocket. That's it. I mean, we've been trying very hard.
But I would say, like, if we just assumed like that this was it, this was the board, I still think we would have filled out the survey and there would have been opportunities of improvement, what you were just saying about, and the board superintendent relationship that we've talked about, and John, hopefully you feel empowered based on the conversation that we had.
Best board meeting ever.
But no, I'm serious.
I agree.
So hopefully you do, there may, and that, but you know, my worry is you leave a meeting like this and we just fall back into the norms. And so I do think we would have come in with a level from some of us of feeling like we could be doing more. And we would have had a discussion, so I don't think this has been the big, like, kind of issue in front of us, but if we just kind of go, okay, we're gonna do what we can do, we're gonna be a board of 6. How can we be a better board of 6? And you being more proactive with us. And you had reached out to me back in October, November and said, I want to be more, you know, I'm gonna talk to you. I thought you were gonna check in with me more actively, and that was it for one time. I don't know if you did that with other board members, but I do, and whether it's one-on-one or we do these meetings.
Yeah, that process hasn't ended. It's starting at the beginning of school.
And Cindy,
Process.
Like, having one-on-one meetings.
Okay, but you had said we were gonna do it, and then it didn't happen. You know, so I thought at other boards I've been on, there's been a little more proactive outside of board meetings, just check-ins. Are there any issues, Cindy? Is there any, you know, just something, and there may not be, or hey, I've been wondering about X, Y, or Z. So I don't know if that's what you had intended, but
Yeah, you know, we'll ramp that up.
or if there's better best practices like the quarterly meetings, it sounds like you're gonna propose. I know that San Mateo, I hate to bring them up again because there are lots of great examples around this state, but San Mateo had mentioned that they actually get a more active like update between meetings on things going on at the county office that someone's sending out. So they're feeling informed, and it's not just these kind of at the board meeting, your report. And I don't know if that's good for us, if that's what we need, but I just
Yeah, I think we maybe have talked about that before, about having superintendent updates. That's something we did at the Shoreline, the district board that I was on for many years. I know that's different because I'm tired.
what did you do?
The superintendent would provide monthly or even every other week updates. Friday memo, just giving us highlights, and I think he would highlight in red things that were related to employment issues. So if there's a Public Records Act request, you would just, be able to take that out. And it was really helpful because the last thing you want is to go to a board meeting and hear something, controversial for the first time. It's just not great for members to not know about big things that are going on. And if there's a way to implement that into.
Yeah,
I think it would
the
be-
conversation that I remember was last summer, and actually Nancy was the one who brought it up.
Okay.
When I signed up on participating in the lawsuits.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, among other things, like, if you're gonna do something big, you should, well, she wanted me to ask permission, but like at least let us know.
Yeah.
What's going on when it's something big.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that I've sort of lost, I haven't been tracking. It's been a fairly calm year, but I think you could do what you're talking about, but like maybe things that I don't think are quite that big, just to keep informed so there are fewer surprises when something.
Yeah.
It seems,
What I didn't want to be pinned down to, and this has been back between me and Nancy for a long time, is the requirement for me to give me something to report.
You know what, I have to tell you, John, I just have to say something. Is that I do think, and I'm listening to Cindy and Jill, and I've had this a couple times. The concerns just about a leadership style. Okay, and again, this is one of the first boards where we didn't hire and fire you, and we don't really have that authority over you. And I know you kind of came in like that, feeling like, phew, you just said it. You know, like, phew, I don't have that. I don't have to deal with that. But I would suggest that you need to step back just for a second and almost remember some of those qualities that you were doing in that previous role.
Yeah.
Because I think the board here is looking for someone.
Yeah.
Right, and kind of not evaluating you on any real sense, but paying attention to them. So
Nancy's here.
we're looking for more. Right, so just really walk away from here knowing that, even though you don't have to, it's probably better practice.
Yeah,
Or better practice.
I think
It's a real opportunity, I think, right? I mean, you're absolutely right. You can do whatever you want and there's nothing we can do, but is that what's best for Marin County? And I would say the answer to no.
Yeah.
Seven of us working together and really help.
I think they've been really helpful. I feel like I can be a lot less part of it.
Yeah.
Good.
Of course, mission driven.
John, I'm gonna send you, however strongly you all feel about this, we have a board member, if she were here, I would say her name. She hates being caught off guard at a level that I cannot describe to you. She just hates it. And our superintendent started doing a monthly newsletter, and she would have for the board, she'd have things going on, and then for the board. I think she might write it herself, but I actually think her communications person does all of it. So you have an opportunity with this new communications person coming in, and I would encourage you to consider, to begin to commence, to get started to consider that doing it regularly, doing it at least once a month, and doing supplemental ones when something comes up. There's no downside for the superintendent. There's only upside. Because the most controversial things we've had on our board is when somebody on the board's been caught off guard in an issue that they feel passionately about. Absolutely changing nothing in the decision-making process, only the information process.
And I don't know if you want to connect with Marco down in San Mateo, or I could reach out and connect the two of you, but he started doing one when he took over as the interim. And the board would just really appreciate it.
And I'll talk to Elise about it.
Yeah,
We hang out all.
she does. It's a really. I'm going to ask her if she actually writes it herself or somebody else does. It's really good. What's that? Alameda, yeah. And we didn't.
Mateo one, I was like, oh, I don't know, that sounds like, so, like, does anybody have time? But then they showed me like example. It was really like, it was just a kind of quick little headline. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. So you feel like you're in the know.
Yeah, it should.
Even if you do it for NIJ, just that's like called out, like, so we're aware of
And
it.
it's a district superintendent.
Oh,
Wouldn't be-
That's what I'm
interesting.
saying, so some of those
Good.
are good.
Yeah,
And so did Adam. Yeah, and everybody loved it. He loved it, we loved it.
Yeah.
But again, you just have to be careful with public record act requests, so if you want to do like red highlight, and it's easy.
She also 90% of it is really cool stuff that she's doing that we didn't know she was doing. So most of the time she's just getting email after email saying, oh, this is great. Oh, we love this. This is good to know. So it's mutually fun.
Thank you.
Acknowledgement, Nancy McCarthy, trustee, showed up. Thank you, Nancy, for making it.
You're welcome.
What else?
So we were talking about some of my homework as we get prepped up. We'll write up these notes, get you the plan, thanks Ken for the props. On my write-up, but then get it teed up for all of you so that, you know, and Cindy, I hear you loud and clearly. And we're doing this at ACCBE too, it's just like you want to eat the elephant all at once and then you get it on paper, reality of time and resources and, you know, the energy, both the actual physical energy and then the momentum to get ad hoc committees together or whatever.
Don't wanna lose it.
Yeah, so.
So are we gonna follow Cindy's suggestion and pick one of those issues to work on? Like, I know we don't have to do it now, but no, I think it's a good idea. And that, so we can all think about it, about what,
Why don't we do something else?
I mean, I think we can, I think we can.
I mean.
So I've actually brought dots with me.
Okay. Okay.
The ominous dots.
The dots. They've made it all the way over here, and now they want to be used. And look at that, they're all cut from a previous session. So you're each gonna get 3 dots, and then I'll move the action list over here so we can. You're not tripping over the.
Should we write our name on it?
That's necessary. But it will just kind of help give an idea of how you want to prioritize, and like it is, once you get the document. You know, it's for you to do as you see fit. So, real quick.
It gave the wrong direction.
I'm gonna use my yellow highlighter here to show up what I saw as the areas. So I have one about process.
Better.
So that's one voting area. The shared goals. The public interface tools. The regular meetings, informal. The ed tech policy. Oh, that's a goal. And then this was for John, the regular.
We also talked about though picking the superintendent.
Yeah, we were looking at his more.
Yeah, priority, we can work on him.
But I feel like
all that
that,
other
I think
stuff's
actually
coming,
we're gonna do all of
We're
it.
gonna do all of that.
Yeah, that's all that.
Yes.
I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's.
Okay.
There we go.
So under the addressing the equity on the initiatives, we have the literacy, early childhood access. School to career pathways, and then there was the mental health bucket. And then the visibility of the COE. I missed any?
is there anything you wanna say, John, to just encourage, like, just, I feel like anything else you wanna add, like, this is where I could really use your help.
Like something that maybe is on your radar but hasn't become one of your priorities that you're thinking about.
Well, or I'm just saying with these 5 before we vote, like, is there, like, John would say, I really could use like the word backing in X, Y, or Z area. Or not backing, because we're backing all generally, but.
We've hit some, because we started this earlier, so right after I got elected, kind of like the general plan. So a lot of work has already happened, but I think the one that jumps out at me most, and this is where it gets sort of dicey because you're all elected officials too. Early childhood education, there's a plan coming up with proposed parcel tax, countywide that just got enough signatures to make it onto the ballot. And it's going to be, and I'm not involved in planning where that goes, or I'm not part of the committee that's running it, but it'll be interesting to see what the plan is for allocating those dollars should it pass. And I don't want to suggest to the board members how they should feel about a parcel tax, but if it does pass, what's the most,
The spending
and this
plan?
I have to learn about, or something I have to do some thinking about, probably talking to you and other people as well. What's the most, how can those dollars be best leveraged for best results for kids? It's gonna be, it looks like the first 5 California local chapters gonna be handling the dollars. What they do with them will be interesting to see, but also I want to pay close attention to make sure that it's going to stuff that the research would suggest is gonna be helpful. But it's kind of something that if you want to chew on something, that's gonna be. And that they just got enough signatures, I think, beginning of this week.
That's great. Go ahead.
Might be like in April, okay,
I think it's in November election.
November,
Yeah.
this November.
Which is, and I was, when it first came up, I was like, that's awful fast. I got the signatures, so it's gonna be on the ballot.
Yeah, NPR covered it this morning.
Yeah. And they got double the amount of signatures it's set up.
It's a county initiative or?
Yeah, I know it.
John Lenz.
When I'm looking at the heading of superintendent relationship, I'm just wondering if the self-up and tech policy should be on this page instead of mine. Or should it be on both?
I thought it was under mental health.
It's here, but I think we also had it over here,
Oh, it's already there. Okay, I didn't see it there. Thank you.
so.
And then a question about the initiative you just brought up, John. Are you looking for the board's help in passing that initiative? Spending plan sounds pretty granular to me, so, or are you asking for help in deciding how to spend the money?
Well,
Not that we
it's-
get to decide that.
It's not gonna be our decision
Right.
where those dollars go if it passes.
So where do you want to see the board spend their efforts with that together? Can you be more specific?
I think, first of all, educating themselves about
Okay,
what it's going to look like and what the specific plan is that's in the ballot language. And I also want to be really careful not to say, I think you should promote any political anything in terms of a local vote. I don't think that just seems like a gray enough area, but also to be ready if that does pass, that we have some influence on where those dollars should go. But it's still kind of right now.
Do you think there'd be a structure put in place on the board that determines where that?
Yeah, there'll be ballot language and that will be more specific.
So is it like, you want them to think about spending priorities within the parameter of the plan?
Well, some of it's gonna be, like one, and this is, and I don't know enough about the final of the ballot language yet, but there is, a lot of enthusiasm for making sure that dollars go toward what they're calling scholarships or vouchers for families to access early childhood education. And there's some concern and this is the, early childhood education, as I mentioned earlier, is one of the more difficult areas to navigate because there's so many agencies and to be frank, they don't all get along with each other. So there's real animosity between some, a lot of us, like, in my opinion, fighting for scraps, like, it's a dollar, I want you, my organization, to do that for you. What I want to make sure, the other side of that equation that I started to talk about, so vouchers, aka scholarships for kids, versus is there other things that people are worried about that might get spent on like administrative costs for whatever agency it might be. So I feel like I need to do a deeper dive on that and talk to you all about where we think what advocacy might be best on the part of me and the board. And a lot of open questions. I'm not sure that makes sense.
I'm interested in just making sure that what you're asking the board to be thinking about is accurately reflected here. So, and maybe I just need to completely rewrite.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds.
And just.
Or ideas about developing an attitude or set of opinions about what the best use of those potential dollars might be. In the event that we find ourselves in a position where we want to advocate one way or another. And it might be that everything looks great and first 5 is running it just fine. And there are no debates about the details, but I do think it's also gonna be important to pay attention to make sure that that's.
But for me, it's a more general discussion on what specific goals can we all get around up there, and the importance of early childhood development is the answer, right?
Yeah.
And how we do that, there's going to be multiple ways that the board can support that vision. And one of them could be this ballot measure, could be looking more at how that money is going to be spent, but it also could be putting a different type of resolution onto the table or looking at other opportunities. But I think it's this general concept that we're trying to align ourselves with you, right?
Right.
I mean, that's the way I would think.
I think that's the spirit of everything here,
Mhm.
within the purview of what the board can do.
As it relates to this specifically, you might want to, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be out of line and suggest that you might do an analysis of what would likely happen if it passed, so that the board was positioned by way of briefing as experts on on what the possibilities were. That would allow you to position yourselves to say if there's ambiguity, and there almost always is, here are some of the ways that we think that we could really be supportive of this through the county office. That might be a way that you could all be in the gate, not necessarily taking a position as a board, but understanding what's likely to happen.
And it can surely come with a staff review at a board meeting.
Yeah.
Report.
It's a great idea.
Right, to start that process.
And not a tremendous amount of time, because you don't know if it's going to pass, but just here's the overview. Because I can look at the ballot initiative like all of you can, but if I don't understand the historic mechanisms for disbursement of the funding, it doesn't. I read it the same way as anybody else does.
Can I just ask one more question? I'm just curious, with your priorities here, including all the priorities there. Does the JLAC look at legislation that's coming out with that as our internal MCOE? Lisa and team, do they look at it as a filter to pull out, like, here's a legislative opportunity that elevates this priority?
Yeah, I don't think that's part of their system for developing positions for JLAC, because I think JLAC is really I mean, we have an influence on it for sure, we staff it, but I think JLAC listens to its own members.
Okay, maybe JLAC wasn't the right one, but it just, when I again looked at other county offices, when they identify priorities, there then is on the board, typically some filter, Placer does a very good job of this. They'll look at legislation, all the various proposals coming through, and they'll identify ones that are aligned with their priorities that they can get behind. I mean, you guys know more than I do about it, but it just as a way to help strengthen, like, you know.
We don't have a formal mechanism for that with JLAC, but I think it's, I mean, we look at everything JLAC does, and obviously I support it's very fine, but.
Right.
Yeah, the leverage points that I have identified, but we don't have, like, I think in Alameda you have like a political.
Yeah,
Like a staff member that does politics, you know, you have your.
Is Placer the same way?
Yeah, Placer, Alameda, LA. Help me, Ken, who are the other two or three?
You share.
I think-
So you're saying you have it.
They have.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them all use capital advisors, and so and then they also end up presenting to the superintendent association. I don't remember who. I don't remember. I thought Sacramento, but I could be wrong.
At the role of the county board in advancing priorities and helping strengthen whatever the critical area is, that's one way that we as a board have not historically, I don't think.
Yeah, that would be helpful. They use this board as a way of helping JLAC assess its or establish its priorities. I think that kind of happens sort of naturally, but I think you could have that done in a more pointed way. Like I was in Sacramento with Elise and your staff member who does political advising. I forget her name. She's great.
Yeah.
But I can point by you got a person who does this, and she just had it all lined up. Like,
Yeah.
Here's what we're working on. Here's what we're then going to committee here.
That's right.
Right. That was on.
Any others? I'm gonna turn you loose with your voting dots.
How many can they vote for?
I gave everybody 3 dots.
Okay.
And
Do the colors mean priority?
No,
Okay.
no, just where you put it. So I've tried to.
With my dot.
Visibility, of course, is that's sort of like I've had a mental shift about what that should look like in the last few months. Like I think we can do a lot more in that area. So I think working with the board, that's gonna be a really critical area for us to collaborate.
Right.
Especially because there's been a different attitude about it.
So I made an attempt here with my little pink highlights and my pink dots. These are the ones to put your dot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 7. So you have 3 dots. So this will kind of help. But all of this will come through on your notes and your paperwork, but this will kind of help start that dialogue about our priorities and where you want.
If you feel strongly, can you put 2 dots on one item?
Feel really strong, you put all 3
Yep.
on one.
Wow.
You go all 3 on
I feel strong.
And it throws a wrench into the works.
5 minutes to do that, get another drink and then we'll work on our.
Shy everybody. This is where my thoughts are. Oh, shoot. No.
We talked but this is about the program. The board. Board is about. And. And so I need. Was what his priorities were. His own priorities. I could. And again, there was some more new. Just coordination become more student. So. What are we on? It's. Another thing was. So important, so we go to that. This is his kind and we talked about. We have. I'm not good for in good things.
Yeah, it's just.
Two of our amazing workshops. I think we're starting, we're about to go.
I think they're at.
So, so that one was in the first. So now we're just asking.
So much good to be with you.
So fish, it's the sea. And
I mean, I haven't heard her
conversation. It's much to be able to say, most of us remember just some. That's what this.
Right, my item.
Well, it's just, the items just came from the conversation. Yeah.
But I would put up there.
Maybe you know.
It's not possible.
It's not a.
Oh, it is not. It's just that, like I said, they will all end up in your final report and it works. Well, this kind of helps. Like I said, not eating it all in the way. Actually. There you go.
They use a lot of those. Yeah, to me, and structure.
One of the things that we.
I'm right there with you. So, wondering what I heard about it, it evolved naturally into. Yeah, so, and that may be the way to keep it. All right, so I'm gonna work on wrapping this up. I have one closing question. But before I get to that, anything to add? Make sure we capture the notes.
I have something to add.
Yes.
What is it up on that board? You know, I wasn't here earlier, unfortunately. But what I would like to see is a complete structural change in the board. I would like to see the board be in charge of the superintendent versus superintendent, basically telling us or running the show. So that we are dancing on the head of the pin by talking about what we're going to do here, because we really don't have the authority to do anything. There are other districts where there has been a change made such that the board has more involvement. I find it personally offensive that board members can be on this board for 20, 25 years, get paid $2,000 an hour in healthcare benefits for showing up 30 hours a year and do virtually nothing. Because right now it is the superintendent that makes all the decisions. So there hasn't been visibility, there hasn't been discussion about anything this board does, because this board doesn't do it. The superintendent does. The superintendent arranges or has staff that arrange for teacher programs and all of those quote unquote good things. This board isn't doing that. And so I think it's sort of a false narrative to indicate that we are doing this and we are doing that. I think we're doing very little. And I don't think that the public really knows in terms of visibility how much people are taking from the taxpayers when they're doing so incredibly little yearly on this board. And I think it's wrong. I think there should be term limits. And I think that there needs to be a totally different structure, which would require a ballot initiative in order to make that change. But I think that all the rest of this is basically, as I said, dancing on the head of the pin. We don't do that. We don't have the right to do that. I can't even get an item on the agenda. I tried to get an item on the agenda regarding uphill, and I was told that it wasn't within the purview of this board, when in fact, this is what the budget is, and we have to vote on it in order for that to happen. Things that are controversial are not addressed by this board, and they're dumped because nobody will put them on the agenda. And that is unfortunate because that's the only thing we're putting in the newspaper. So we're not even getting a varied opinions on the Oak Hill project, which is one of the biggest projects for which apparently John Carroll has publicly committed millions of dollars, when in fact, I've learned that it's the board that would have to vote on that. So I don't understand structurally how the superintendent, any superintendent, but it's John Carroll or Joe Blow, can make a commitment like that when in fact the board has to vote on it. So I see the things that are happening here as just putting lipstick on the pig. I mean, what are we doing? We're not really going to do any of those things. We can't really affect any of those things. All of those things are the decision of the superintendent. So I look at this as much ado about nothing because I've seen what's happened over the years, and I've looked at the minutes and I've seen what has gone on, and it's not the board that's effectuating anything. And so I sort of look at this retreat as, you know, what are we talking about here? We're not making those decisions. We're not making these decisions. So the people who are the staff of MCOE. Those are the people who are the worker bees that are doing stuff. And we have no control over that. Not at all. We don't even have our own attorney. We have an attorney that is paid for by the superintendent. And we used to have a law firm, and we don't have that anymore. So we get opinions that are affected by, in potentially, who's paying the salary and who controls the employment. And I don't see how structurally any of that is workable. I think that we're just really we go to these meetings and you can't even ask a second question. At the last board meeting, I attempted to have some dialogue about something that I knew a lot about because I was on another board. And I was basically told by the chair that there's no back and forth here. I mean, we can't even have a conversation when we're only showing up for 3 hours a
It's
day.
unfortunate you missed today's conversation because we had a lot of really good dialogue with that board dynamic. Unfortunately, the way it is set up does not allow. So Then it's a great setup, because I was gonna ask everybody today, what's your takeaway from today as we wrap up? So I'm gonna start with you, Chair Robinson. What is your takeaway?
My takeaway that was that we actually had a really good conversation today. Nancy, I'm sorry you missed it. We started the morning by looking at the different responsibilities that the board has in comparison to the superintendent. And we actually saw a bit of overlap, but what we noticed when we looked at that Venn diagram was that there were unique separate responsibilities that we were all basically elected to support. And you might have a chance to look at that Venn diagram, it's in your packet. I think my takeaway is that we're gonna continue, even given the ongoing negative statements that we hear in this program here, in this group, that we're gonna continue to try to put a positive spin on it and support what's in the best interest for our children. In any way that we can, and part of doing that is to try to collaborate and work with our superintendent and not against him. And so my big takeaway here is that I think we came a little bit closer in working with our superintendent on common shared goals that we're now documenting here and we're going to get some response from you. And we're going to actually take one or two of these things forward as a group together to help our children and learn.
Jill? What's your takeaway for today?
My takeaway was Ken's very enlightened observation that even though a lot of us, including me, focus too much on the negative things that happen in the board, we neglect to see how much we actually agree on. And I see a path forward for us to work together in a positive way as a result of this meeting. And that makes me very great.
Cindy?
I appreciate the openness, the conversation, and the shared goal for everyone here of improving education in Marin. And I especially appreciate Debbie and Ken, like just your approach of moving us along, giving us guidance and suggestions. It was really, really, I think, beneficial for all of us. So thank you.
Lee?
My biggest takeaway is that it's really good to have a meeting like this because it's a different environment from the monthly meetings that we have or any other special meetings that we have, because it really brought out in each of us what we see are issues that are happening right now, how we can be cooperative and how can we really be successful as a team. And I think there was a better definition on how we can really interact well with John. He's a good soul, so that would be good to take the benefit of that. I do want to say one response to the Oak Hill meeting. I think it's unfortunate, Nancy, that you were not around when there was actually that whole Oak Hill presentation. It probably would have been good to have that, to be present.
Carolyn?
Yes, I had several takeaways. One that I really appreciated the honesty that came out, and especially some of the things that John shared with us, which was terrifically helpful and very helpful in directing the rest of where we went. Second, I agree with everything I heard because you guys sort of nailed it on your comments. And the third thing is I realize I really don't know everything because I honestly didn't know that this was going to be as helpful as it was. I didn't think it would be, and I really appreciated it. So I might feel good about it.
Thank you. Ken, before I turn it back to Chair Robinson to close out, do you have anything?
Am I going to have a takeaway?
Oh,
Or I don't get one?
you had several minutes to
I just
share
talked
your.
about what was over there. Wasn't asked about the takeaway. You excluded me from that communication.
I felt that had been your comment. So what is your takeaway?
My takeaway is that for this to come, for somebody to come to a conclusion that they could do something after 20 years each of being on the board and not knowing what this Venn diagram shows is one of the problems here. I don't believe that there's been any real evaluation. I am concerned when there is any criticism of the board that it is then addressed with a mischaracterization. I'm not working against John Carroll. My concerns are structural, not personal. And I believe that the structure of this arrangement is not a healthy one, and I don't think it's good for the community. I think that, and I don't think it's good for the taxpayers who are paying 7 people, in some cases, you know, $50,000-$60,000 a year for doing virtually nothing. I just don't see how that's legitimate. With respect to the positive spin in the best interest of the children, I look at this and say, why weren't we taking a reserve of, at that point, $50 million and helping the people out in Mill Valley who had to start raising money for TK and providing that to them? When you talk about these sort of ethereal things that aren't, you know, the best interest of the children, what is that? When in fact you see an actual need, do you take care of it right away when you have the resources to do it? And that's what I think is missing from this board, that we don't have the authority to do things. And if we can sit here and talk about maybe sharing a goal with John Carroll, but what can we do about it? And I feel that the lack of authority by board members to do anything is critical. I think that there needs to be a structural change for this board to be able to effectuate the things that they have as their policies, as opposed to putting all the policies into the hands of just one man or woman.
Ken.
It's just been such an interesting day. I mean, I honestly, I didn't, I expected it to be fun, but I didn't expect it to be as intellectually stimulating as it was. Because I think some of the problem that we're dealing with and some of the challenges, what happens when there's a supermajority of the board that disagrees with a minority of the board? I'm on a board where I'm in the minority and often find myself in that position. I also, the discussion sort of coming to a head now, because the debate about the structure of county offices is a valid debate. I mean, it's an interesting debate. You have appointed superintendents in almost every district in the state, and only in the county office do you have an elected superintendent. And so the discussion about whether or not there should be a change in state law is an interesting one. I think there's a separate discussion about how effective it is to have it in this room versus in the broader room where the law is made. And so it's a California state legislature, it's a ballot initiative at the end of the day. But within this room, the fact that you're such a spirited, positive, aligned group gives you the chance to do, I think, remarkable things in partnership with your superintendent rather than as their boss, as the law says, for better or worse. So I'm genuinely excited for you all. I mean, you would have to know me to know that normally I'm not like this. I've been thrown out of a few rooms for not being quite so positive. And I can't wait to see what you all will do next. I really think that the idea of getting behind some of these initiatives and really taking it to the next level is going to be a lot of fun for you all. I feel lucky to have been here.
Thank you for entrusting Ken and I with your process. Really enjoyed working with you, and whether this is the culmination and you spur on to other things, or if you have us back to work with you again, I welcome and wish you the best either way. And with that, President Robinson, I hand it back to you.
Right. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you very much, everyone. Let's adjourn the meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing that, we need